Call the meeting to order at 6 o'clock. We have a minute taker. We'll do our best on time. And our first thing is public comment. You want to come on up or you want to sit?
Maybe I'll just stand.
Yeah.
So I can see everybody. Or maybe I'll sit right there.
Yes.
I'm Nancy Cornell, and for those of you, I know lots of you, but not all of you, and just by way of introduction quickly. I was the associate superintendent of schools in the school district for 13 years. And before that, I was on the school board for many years. And after that, I was on the school board for some years. And I was also, as part of that school board work, I was a member of the Addison Northeast Supervisory Union Board. My kids went to school in this school district, and I currently have 2 grandchildren in school in this school district. So I'm pretty well acquainted with the work you're all doing, and also with the challenges, some of the challenges that you're facing. I just wanted to say a couple of things tonight at the beginning about some of the work you're going to do tonight. I've taken a look at the presentation from the August 12th retreat, and I have some big concerns about the options that you are currently looking at and thinking about narrowing down. And I'm not alone. There are other community members who are talking to me about their concerns. I think I see that, I definitely recognize the kind of fiscal pickle you are facing for FY27. And I understand that that's considerable and that's a big concern. At the same time, I think it's going to be really important to look at a wide variety of options for solving that problem, rather than narrowing your options to simply looking at closing schools or reconfiguring the grade levels in schools. And I think that community members would really want to know that before you started narrowing down options, you looked at a wide range of different ways to solve the financial crisis, not crisis, but challenge anyway, that you're facing for next year and beyond. So I'm urging you tonight to not begin to narrow down options before you look at some of the other ways that you could solve the problem. That would have fewer unintended negative effects. So that's what I wanted to say about that piece of your work tonight. The other thing I wanted to say is that you've got at the, the resolution that you're going to be considering toward the end of the meeting, around a message to the redistricting, the statewide redistricting committee. That committee is really looking for input from school districts. They're being pretty vocal about it, and they're on a quick timeline, and they have to come up with up to 3 different models for redistricting, I think by December 1st. So passing a resolution that reflects this board's values around democracy and community, and keeping you as a board as close to the schools that you govern as possible, rather than creating a whole new board in a much larger district. Sending that kind of a message to the task force and sending it soon is really important. So I hope that you will take the time to finalize that resolution, not only adopt it, but also send it on to the task force as soon as possible. So thank you.
Thank you, Nancy. Okay. Any other public comment? There's a chair right here. You good? You got a chair? Good to go? Okay. Just want to make sure you're there. Let's see.
Next to Patrick. Yeah.
Usually. Okay, I don't see any other hands for public comment. So next we have an action to approve the agenda. So moved. Second. Kathy first, Meredith second. Any discussion? All those in approving the All those in favor of approving the agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. Next we'll move into the consent agenda. So we have a few things to approve. So the first is a motion to approve the minutes from 3 board meetings. So, Meredith. Do we want to approve the consent agenda as a whole?
Yes.
Yes. Or do you want to each one so you can discuss it?
I would just like, for C, I would like to wish that staff and for all the best, to let them know the board deeply supports. Their lives.
Thank you. Okay, so Meredith first, a second for approving the consent agenda.
I'll second.
Kristen, any other discussion? All those in favor of approving the consent agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. Next we'll go down into the executive limitations monitoring. And we'll start with a FY 27 budget preview.
So the update with that is there's no update with that. We had it on as a placeholder, Floyd and I connected. There really isn't any new information that we could lean on to give you an update that changes anything. So I can walk through it again, but it's the same that you've seen once or twice now. Last being at the retreat, and the time before that would have been maybe finance and facilities.
Okay.
So happy to share again and walk through it or not.
Feeling good? Okay, so then we'll just bump down then to the summer facility projects.
Jump on that.
Okay,
I did want to go one way with that, the other way with these. I think they're the same. And that is simply a list of the items that we've worked on this summer. With check marks for those which are completed. I'm not gonna spend an awful lot of time going through them, but I am going to talk about the big projects that you don't necessarily see jumping out. Mount A, new roof, new PA system that works. Under the PA system, we've moved in with the vape detectors as well. Our parking lots have been redone.
Yay.
By parking lots, we did that under the 3-acre stormwater. We leveraged some of the on-site folks that were gonna be here. And did the parking lot, did the stormwater work. Additionally, we ran electric out and past where our pavement is, so that we won't be cutting that up going forward. We've installed curbs, improved the sidewalks. We've got a stage entrance that allows you to work on stuff there. Science wing update, we've updated the science area with new tables, new floors, it's not in yet, but a fume hood, which allows for a lot of safety to be a little more recognized.
A drain beneath the drenched shower in the chemistry lab?
That doesn't just go into the floors. It's made a huge difference, and it will be it would be fun to go take a look at it.
Yeah.
We have a dust collector in our woodworking area, which is, doesn't sound like a big deal, but our insurance and our woodworking instruction was very concerned about the opportunity for a possible fire in our old system, so that's been removed. We talked about vape detectors, and we've added a new tractor here, one that is covered and heated in the winter to allow us to do a little bit more work around that. Additionally, the roof at Bristol is done. We went over the old wing, and we have a kitchen hood system in there now. District-wide, we replaced a whole bunch of floors. Those are the bigger items on top of what you have in front of you now. Any questions on any of that?
So the BES roof is done and the Mount A roof is done, they just.
So
wrote
the
check marks?
BES roof, think of the old wing, the flat roof down near the cafeteria. That's what's done. Yep. The other doesn't need it, it's standing still.
Save for maybe some trim work, it's.
So I drove by
You did-
before I
you did
came
get
in,
done, okay.
yeah, Patrick and I were talking
Just a
about it
recent
today, and
days.
neither one of us had eyes on the trim work around it. as to whether or not they had finished that in the last couple of days, but that looks great.
I know it's mostly aesthetics, but the librarian couldn't be more excited about this space.
I had it on my list and I skipped over it. We walked.
Oh, yeah,
over
yeah.
this. Yes.
She's so excited, the carpet, the seating, and I like this one.
The seating over there was picked, so each year the community council here at Mount Abe has sort of a pot of money that they have complete say over to pick something to sort of improve upon in the facility. And that is what they picked out for last year, the couch, yeah, over in that seating area behind Nancy there. Many of them are seniors, so they'll have to come back and visit to sit on it, but others will get to enjoy the benefits.
So the asbestos, in the science wing is taken care of, did you do asbestos?
Yeah, the asbestos,
Or just-
the whole wing, all of the flooring that was removed was abated, yeah. Yeah, we tend not to just put flooring over the asbestos old flooring, we take the opportunity to get rid of the old asbestos and put the new down.
It wasn't just the flooring with the asbestos, the previous desks, tables were of that same ilk.
Hey Floyd, is there anything on that you didn't get done that you wanted to get done?
How long do you have?
I mean, like, no, that you kind of thought.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to be flip, but
You can be flip.
the list is long. But Patrick and I have been talking to Lynette for the last couple of days about what are we going to do next summer?
Yeah.
Right, so that's kind of where we are. We know at the top of the list is the electrical system here. That's something that we've deferred. And I think the roof took priority over that, rightfully so. You'll see in the financials that we've squirreled a few nickels away for the electrical project. But that would be the big one,
Mhm.
you know, and then it really will come down to punching through the items that we think are, that make sense. That will fit what we have for budget constraints, and then probably or more importantly, what's happening statewide. So that we're not sending money into an area that, that's going to be drastically different.
Right. One notable thing that comes to mind was the fitness center that we had talked about, and that just availability of engineers and asbestos abatement folks was limited, so that got hung up, and so that's still something that we'll move forward with, and that space is currently unoccupied, so we can do that. There's less of a push to get that done before school reopened.
Right.
So that may be something that we're able to do mid-year, pick a break here or there, work into that.
I'll update that a little bit. We're waiting on an HVAC engineered piece for that part of the building. We're reluctant to just heat and cool that particular space when that whole wing has issues with too much heat and too much cold. So we're looking at a little bit bigger project creep to get that part covered as well. There is asbestos that we need to work with, and we've got some fire code egress questions that we need to have answered with the fire marshal. And we think we have a path forward. It just requires a different set of windows than we have in our current structure and plans.
There's science room cabinets, we're not checked off, did those get done?
It's because when Joe went on vacation, they weren't all done yet. I think they're done now. There may be one room that's not finished.
It's the other way around. There's one room that is finished, just awaiting countertops, and we're still waiting for the others.
Perfect. Thank you.
Any other thoughts about this list?
Nice work.
A lot of work.
That's a lot of work. In a short period of time.
It's, 8-week window or so, like that's a lot, it's a busy place. I was here a few days over the summer. Without exaggeration, Mike Orvis, who's the head of facilities here, his phone rings every minute and a half. It's somebody who needs something and he's got to answer a question to keep it all moving forward and keep all the contractors dancing around each other. It's really something.
Wow.
there's a humongous boulder out back where we dug the hole for the catchment system for water coming off the roof under the 3 acre rule and project that, what they think was, I don't know, 6 tons. So big old rock out there. It's kind of fun to see. And a really big hole.
It might be holding the bank up.
It took the pressure off the bank by removing.
Okay. The next on the list is the financial report update. Are there any questions or thoughts about that?
I have a question.
Yep.
Everybody's surprised. Sorry, I'm scrolling so I can quote the right numbers, and I guess I'm directing this probably to Floyd. Within the expenditures, general administration, 2,300, there's no explanation for the 504,000. When I scroll to the detail, it looks like it's HRA employer expense, which is, we have that lumped in depending on where the employees are. So why was central admin so favorable? And what did we budget that we didn't incur there?
And I'll be honest, I have not, we just finished the audit this week, so I haven't torn this apart. And I can defer an answer to tomorrow morning. I would say you're right, a lot of it is the HRA. And I may be able to come up with the answer here in just a second.
Okay, and I'm trying to remember, and it's been a little bit, so you'll have to forgive me. I know when we were talking, think budget. We were talking about how the budget for both salaries and the fringe related to those, like to each employee were within the direct instruction or vocational education, or, it was within there. So I was confused what was done in general admin and wanted to better understand that. So if you need time to look into it, that's fine. We can put a pin in it and hear back. The other thing I was just confused about was the math, and I'm probably just not understanding at the bottom of page this, where you look at the fund balances. We've got the almost 3 million in FY 25 fund reserve balance, but then we're adding in all of these committed fund balance projects to get to 4.8. I'm confused what we're doing there, because 4.8 is not what our fund balance is. And even if I add the 1.5 that we potentially have left over after audit for this year, plus the 2.2, I don't get to 4.8, and then it looks like we've overspent. So can you help me reconcile that?
The committed fund balance projects
Yep.
are not yet allocated. So we have a list of items that of the 1.572 million,
Mm-hmm.
we will allocate. We paid some of them, and some of them will allocate for fiscal year 26. This is an area that we're slow to finish. Pending the fund balance confirmation from the auditors.
So if I add up all the committed fund balance projects, I get 2.6 million.
Correct.
Which is 400,000 more than the 2.2 on our balances. So you're saying some of that will come out of the 1.5.
Some of that will come out of the 1.5, some of it will defer. These projects were completed over the summer.
Yeah.
And as we came into the summer, we identified these as possible holdovers to commit fund balance to. And if our fund balance holds where it is, we'll be taking funds from our fiscal year 26 capital improvement line to cover those costs.
Okay.
Part of the delay is on that 1.5 million. As we're talking about a budget, we could absolutely use all of it and reduce this number significantly. Not necessarily move some of these projects forward and not commit funds to them. And that would leave nothing in a fund balance for the board to work with. And given our current dynamic budget discussions over the next couple of board meetings, having a little bit of ability to be flexible that was in Patrick's, in my eyes, probably of most import to the board. Even though it wasn't talked about, we just are feeling strongly that. The more options we have these next two board financial meetings,
Mhm.
the more we can. React to what outside pressures come in,
Okay, I think that the way this is presented is,
not optimal.
no, that 4.8 makes it look like we're overspending fund balance by $2 million.
Yeah.
It's right, and I didn't think so, because that'd be alarming. But the way this is presented, I kind of want it in the minutes that that's not what's happening.
I'll take credit for it being a little, not a little, it being unclear. And I really wanted to be able to present a list of items that we were considering. And,
Yep.
and paying for.
Yep, agreed, and I think that's good for transparency, it is, that 4.8 is a big number, and it's.
Big number.
Yeah, it's scary looking, that's all. Thank you for the clarity.
Any other questions on this report?
Is that why you're laughing?
No, I'm just looking at the 4.8, I just.
Yeah. It like jumped off the page.
No other thoughts on the financials?
Nobody else had those?
Oh,
Still noted
We're
all.
all thinking the same
Yeah,
thing.
same thing.
Okay, move down then to the board management and governance. So the first item is a discussion about picking a date for the December board meeting. And the reason I wanted to present this is because right now we're slated to meet the week of Christmas. I think it's like the day before Christmas,
23rd.
Eve, the 23rd. To me, my preference would be to meet the 16th. That would mean though that we're meeting back-to-back weeks, the 9th and the 16th.
I'd rather that than, the 23rd.
Great.
The 23rd, I usually can't even see anyone.
Yeah.
Okay, so thumbs up if 23rd or 16th instead of 23rd.
Yeah,
Okay, beautiful, thank you.
getting condemned for not.
The next is, we're gonna pair up for the peer-to-peer evaluation. We do this every quarter. So if you could just pick a buddy that you're sitting next to, and that'll be your buddy for this thing, so it'd be you two. Urban Meredith, you two, and then Liz, you can pair up with. My goodness, pair up with Barb. Right, so it'll be Brad and Kristen. Mike and Sarah. Kylie and Melissa. Kathy and Justin. Meredith and Herb. And Liz and Barb. And you can find what you need to find for that process on the top of the agenda. Okay. You'll also find
Where are the materials?
on the top of the agenda, there's a link. Yep.
Okay.
Um. Also on the top of the agenda, you'll find a board work plan. And is that, we need to double check if this is updated.
Yep.
Wonderful. So our next item is to approve the new board work plan that's attached at the top of the agenda. And I don't know if the
That work plan shows the 16th already, so.
wonderful.
Yes,
Just
there's a
need to
little
double
note
check.
there.
Okay, so the 16th is reflected in there.
And one other note that you'll see in here, the January meetings, the committee and board meetings needed to flip-flop so that this board could meet within the time frame needed to warn the annual meeting. So a little reversal there.
Because we didn't want the same conundrum that we had last year. Can I get a motion to approve? So moved. Meredith,
Second.
Melissa, second. Any other discussion? All those in favor of approving the board work plan, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. Next is to approve the board and committee meeting dates, which are also income on that same work plan, so we're sort of redundant, but can I get a motion to approve? So. Melissa first. I'll second. Sarah second. Any discussion? All those in favor of approving board and committee meeting dates, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Next is an action to charge the Policy and Governance Committee with drafting new ends policy. Can I get a motion?
So.
I'll second.
Okay, Kathy first, Mike second. Any discussion?
Yeah, I have,
Yeah.
I mean, it's great.
Yeah.
He did redraft the ends policy, and that's good. I'm wondering whether the, subcommittee could take a look at the relationship between the ends policy and the strategic plan. And, I don't know if you've already been thinking about this, but in my mind, I look at the I mean, the ends policy is great. It is kind of a general, kind of thing. Sort of like a vision, it's a great vision statement, but I'm not sure how much guidance it really gives to the administration about how to implement it. The strategic plan has a lot of stuff in it. Not all of which is policy, of course, but some is. That's my view of it. And so I would ask that you take a look at that relationship and see whether there's some stuff in the strategic plan. Obviously you can't do it yourself, you need the administration to help and guide and whatever. But whether there's some stuff in there that probably should be considered a policy that whether we write it or not, at least adopt it, that kind of thing. So that's something.
Yeah, no, I agree with that, and I think that if the board decides to charge the Policy and Governance Committee with that, I think the first step might be coming up with a process on how to do that. And then have some sort of feedback loop throughout that process in order to make sure that we're hitting the strategic plan or. This revision theoretically will come before the strategic plan is built, because the ends policy should be the vision that guides what the strategic plan looks like.
Right, well, maybe I didn't explain myself.
Okay,
The ends policy is a policy, right?
correct.
So, the strategic plan is set out right now. It just, I look at it in, just my experience doing policy, and strategic plans, those kinds of things. A lot of stuff that's in the strategic plan is in fact policy, in my opinion. People may disagree with it. And so I'm just wondering how that squares with our policy governance, perspective of, if there's anything in the strategic plan that in fact is policy, sort of seems like something that the board should at least adopt.
I see. So if I'm hearing you correctly, you're saying to ensure the next strategic plan revision isn't duplicating or recreating policy. So that the ends is a much more clear document about the outline that.
Well, I'm wondering whether the Policy and Governance Committee could take a look at the strategic plan and see if there's anything in there that is properly policy that should be adopted by the board.
Oh, okay.
Just asking that you
Yep.
consider.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Any other discussion about that? Other than that idea?
Sure we'll talking about it in 2 weeks.
I'm sure we will. Along with a lot of other things. Okay. All those in favor of charging the Policy and Governance Committee with drafting a new ends policy, please say aye.
Aye.
Right.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. The next is an action item to appoint a proxy for the Bisbit and VHI annual meetings. Can I get a motion?
What exactly? Oh, I'm
I'll
sorry.
get into that,
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah.
Justin first,
Second.
Kylie second. Discussion.
What does the project?
Yeah.
I can
I
offer
had the
some
same question,
information
yeah.
on that. So each year, and it's usually at the fall, VSBA, VSA joint conference. It's usually the morning of the second day. It's a 2-day conference. Visbit, which is our insurance company, and VHI, which is sort of a subgroup within the insurance company, have their annual meetings. And because we are participants in their programs, we get a vote as a board at the actions that they take at their annual meetings. There often isn't a whole lot of like really juicy action that happens at these things. I think all we have so far, I haven't seen the VHI yet, I've only seen the Visbit. And the juiciest thing is electing new officers, which is usually not that juicy. That said, the process, if you were to exercise your vote, you have a few different choices. One is you could appoint a person from this board. It's always been from this board. It may not technically have to be from this board, but you appoint a person that you would name. And we send in that name and contact information to Visbit. They send paperwork to that individual, and that individual needs to be physically present in the morning for the annual meeting to cast the vote on behalf of MAUSD. We actually get 2 votes at the Visbit because we're members in the multi-line policy and also the unemployment policy, and we get 1 vote on the VI. So that's the number of votes you would be electing this person to do. Your other option is to appoint the Visbit board or the VHI board for that one to be the proxy for this. So whatever vote they cast carries the weight of 2 votes from MAUSD for Visbit and the 1 for VHI. The other option is do nothing and you cast no votes.
I was the proxy last year and I sat in on the meetings. I think the juiciest thing was the 11%.
Yeah.
Right, that was the
Right.
biggest thing and everyone was cheering about that, right? So
It was
Um,
only 11%.
because it was only 11%, yeah. But the meetings are pretty dry. There's a lot of talk that sort of was well above my head, but it was good to just see and hear what was going on. There's a fair amount of people in attendance, but not every board certainly was there. So I think I'll be there again this year, but if other people were interested in doing that process, cool.
And I do have the agenda for again, I don't have the VHI yet. But I do have the agenda for the Visbit. So it's roll call, proof of notice of meeting or waiver of notice, reading of prior annual meeting minutes, reports of officers and directors, election of directors, information exchange, adjournment.
Is anyone feeling like they'd like to do that?
We'd be honored if you would.
Yeah.
Do it once
Agreed.
again this year.
I'm sure you all would.
You did so well last year.
It was a great honor. Okay. All right, so me, I suppose, as the proxy.
The motion is to appoint Eric Jeffner as proxy.
Correct,
We need to have them amend that or. Friendly,
friendly amendment from,
you're comfortable with whoever
Justin?
amended that?
Yes, that's what I said.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what I thought.
That's what I heard.
Yeah, good.
Thank you.
all those in favor of appointing me for proxy for those annual meetings, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. The next is an action item to authorize the chair to sign a side letter to the professional staff collective bargaining agreement. Can I get a motion, please?
So moved.
Meredith first,
I'll second.
Kristen second. Any discussion?
This was just some cleanup a little bit after the negotiations settled. So a couple of things, you'll see workers' compensation shows up twice, once for the support staff agreement and once for the licensed staff agreement. That is something there's mutual interest around. It didn't make it into the conversation in negotiations, but basically the way it works right now per our collective bargaining agreement is when an employee is out on workers' compensation, that employee receives checks from the workers' compensation insurance. By contract, they are required to turn those checks over to MAUSD, and we then pay them out of payroll. And that's how it's been done for years and years and years to enable them to access their leave benefits in their contract. We don't have to do that for them to access their leave benefits, and it's much more work for the HR department to manage. And the employee is taking a non-taxed benefit and turning it into a tax benefit because we have to take taxes out going through payroll. So everyone's interested in the employee no longer signing those checks over to the district, they just keep them and they'll get a prorated amount of their leave in addition to that. So this language, it's been vetted by legal and allows us to move in that direction. So that's the workers' comp language that you see a couple of times. In addition to that, teacher leader. So teacher leader is a stipend that is primarily used here at Mount Eight for folks that are managing department responsibilities and things of that nature. One of the challenges is sometimes, and it's playing out that way in this current school year, the folks that are interested in being teacher leader happen to all be high school teachers. And that leaves out the middle school perspective, which is really important to bring to the teacher leader table. So the language here is because in this particular circumstance, that could repeat again, this middle school teacher leader position wouldn't have some of the same responsibilities that other teacher leaders have, that they only get the monetary compensation and they wouldn't get the release from sections benefit. That wasn't presently allowed, so this language would allow that flexibility to have the kind of representation we want on that teacher leader group. In negotiations, we had discussed and agreed to recognize speech language pathologists that were in a master's program that required 60 credits to complete. And most master's credit programs are 30 credits. So most folks in MAUSD that have their masters was 30 credits, and then they can, for credits they earn beyond that, up to an additional 30 credits, they can advance horizontally on our pay scale. The argument made for speech language pathologists was those folks have already done the 30 credits that everybody else has done and another 30. So can we give them credit for the 60 credits and place them on a master's plus 30, even though they haven't earned 30 more credits subsequent to earning their master's program? So that was agreed to in negotiations. Since negotiations, word got out, people said, what about this? And what about that? And what about the other thing? And kind of what we discovered was that is sometimes true for school counselors as well. And we also discovered that some people, it's not a sort of dichotomy of it's either a 30 credit master's or a 60 credit master's. There's a whole bunch of credits in between that someone can earn, which may place them on the master's plus 15. So it's taking the same spirit that was negotiated and extending that to the current reality to place people relative to their credits earned in their master's degree program and to add school counselors. If you followed all of that, kudos to you. There's
SLPs and counselors.
It's very specific to those two
Okay.
currently. Who knows over time if others may come up, but those two right now are the only ones that some concern came up around, one in negotiations and one since negotiations. Some of the others, like the new hires, that just needed to also recognize that school counselors are gonna be placed differently as a result of what I just described to you. We'd already addressed that for speech language pathologists. And then the co-curricular salary schedule, we just missed that. We didn't adjust the base salary, which was what drives all the co-curricular pay, to reflect the new base salary. So this does that. I think that's the last of it.
What was the previous base salary?
I'd have to look, but I think it was like 50,000 and some change.
Any other questions about that side of it? No? Okay. And all of those in favor of authorizing the chair to sign the side letter to professional staff collective bargaining agreement, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions?
We should have asked, is that in the budget? Before we voted, would have been a good idea.
Yeah, I mean, most of this, like with the staff change from when the budget's built, this is part of what gets in the wash, and we're not talking about large groups of people, we're talking about a few people within the category of counselor and SLP, so it's a pretty narrow number of people, and it's less than the equivalent of one person who used to take the single health insurance, now takes the family health insurance. So it kind of comes out in the wash in the end. But so the answer, I guess, is no, it wasn't specifically budgeted for. In part because if you recall, we completed the budget before we completed negotiations, so we didn't budget for most of the things that came out of negotiations.
But we do have the money to pay for.
We do.
Okay. Next is a discussion for evaluation, evaluating options for educational delivery. And in the chair notes I had sent you all the things we had discussed at the board retreat. And in a few minutes, I'm gonna send you a rubric that we're all gonna work with together. I'm gonna hand you all a number. And if you were at the board retreat, and Liz, this will be a little bit different for you. I don't wanna know your number. I don't wanna see it, and I don't think you should let anyone else see it either. The goal is to get our opinions into this rubric. So I'm gonna send you a rubric that we'll all access and fill out, and a number. Yep,
Is
You
it
can send that
say it?
digitally, Aaron?
I will, yes.
Is it gonna say our names like as we're editing the rubric?
You will all be populated up on the top here, but in terms of us tracking who's where.
Thank you.
Yep. Or are you having trouble getting onto the Wi-Fi?
No, well, you're gonna send it, I guess.
Yep.
Can I mention something first before we
Yep.
start into that process?
It's discussion about it, so yes.
Yeah, and so we're into that, right?
Mhm.
Okay, so very late, I circulated a little note to folks around. I mean, I'm just really worried about how we're going about the process. And aside from timing issues, I'm really worried. I mean, these are very consequential decisions, right? Really important. They're important for our students, parents, communities. And I think it's tough to try to capture all that stuff in a rubric. What I have maybe sort of three sort of thoughts in mind. Just let me, can I circulate this?
Sure. Is that what you sent earlier?
Yes.
Yeah.
But I mean, that was what, 4:00, 4:30, just coming back from a 5-hour ride. Sure.
My brother reached really. I've got it on screen, somebody else needs it.
I have a copy too, Herb, if you wanna.
Okay,
I didn't get it, that's it.
yeah, sorry.
Really?
Yeah, there's
And there's really sort of kind of 3 points. Did I give you one that?
Yeah, go ahead.
The first is, we're talking about potentially, closing schools. Or significantly disenrolling folks in those community schools, right? A bunch of the alternative options that have been laid out. And talk about, we're gonna, disenroll these folks from their community school, move them somewhere else. And I think it's really tough, at least it's tough for me to try to figure out what the best options are. If you don't have sort of a different focus on what we're trying to do. I mean, it seems to me that there is some value, right? We're talking about educational value for students. And so we need to look at that. And I don't think we've had enough. So when I'm thinking of, there are certain metrics I think we can use. There might be ones that I, not aware The ones that just come to mind are proficiency kind of stuff, SEL kind of things, that kind of stuff. And, you know, beyond the quantitative, you have, there's some qualitative stuff too. You know, teachers can offer that, parents, community members, students can offer sort of the qualitative. What's the value of a student being educated at that community school? So you talk about that, you try to get some metrics, you'd have some qualitative discussion. And then, if you're talking about closing a school or disenrolling folks, I think you need to you have to try to take a look at that value and, you know, compare it to where you're gonna put the kids, right? And the goal should be, in my mind, to make sure that we're improving that student's education. You know, and I'm not, I don't have a good feel for that. But I'd like to see that sort of process play out, so we have the information for, you know, the school, community school they're in now, you know, and what might be, you know, where they're gonna be going. And then beyond that, obviously, there's a financial component, you know, it's huge financial component. But I think you have to start with, you know, what the value is for students and parents in the community. And then very important, I mean, we gotta fund all this, we gotta afford this stuff. But I'm worried that we're not. I wanna make sure that we're looking long term. And right now, I think we have a snapshot of, you know, we got a number, do this, and you're gonna save that. For the FY 27 budget. And I think we need to look a little bit longer term at that. And so in the proposal that I circulated late, I'm sorry about that, but I was still driving. And there are a bunch of considerations, I think. The first one that comes to mind is Roxbury. I don't know if anyone followed that story. But in the spring of 2024, a bunch of budgets ours went down, right? And the little town of Roxbury was in the bigger, you know, district of Montpelier. And they got slammed, you know, they got outvoted and they closed Roxbury School. They didn't have a choice. Devastated. The town, it still is devastating, the town. And by report, they're not in any better shape than they were. So that's why I talk, you know, a little bit longer horizon in terms of, you know, not just the next fiscal year. Then you got the grade cohort stuff. As far as I can tell from the NESDEC's material, our elementary school population is relatively stable. And, you know, we got issues, obviously, in terms of enrollment at middle school and in the high school. But my sense is that, you know, as the cohorts move up, that's gonna change. So I think you need to consider that, those kinds of things. What else have I got? Alternatives, you know, I've talked about this before. Things are happening in Montpelier, things are really in flux. I mean, we don't know whether it's gonna happen or not. But at least some of the changes are gonna involve, you know, changes in district size. You know, this board might cease to exist. And do we want to make, I would say, some pretty significant changes to how we deliver student education now, you know, without seeing how all this will play out. I can tell you that the folks in Montpelier, they were really jumpy about 2024 when it was essentially a tax revolt, right? Now we've got projections of what, 15 to 20% increase. You know, I had a separate document that I want to explore how that was. But that assumes, I think, that nothing's gonna happen in Montpelier. That might very well be the case. But it might not be the case because people want to get reelected. I just worry about making a decision that's going to be consequential over the long term for our students when that might not be necessary or premature. Um, and then the final, I guess, part to this is, why are we doing all this? Well, I think the goal is to make sure that communities have a meaningful voice in the decision. And they need a little time, I think people are just starting to become aware of the possibilities of what the board might do. And if we go too quickly, I worry that they're gonna have a negative reaction that might not be grounded in, facts and stuff. But that might be what it's gonna feel like for folks. So I think they need some good evaluative information around value of the school. They need some good consideration about what the long as well as short-term financial impacts are. And they need a little time to think about that. So that they, is this a good idea or not? Is the grade banding, how does that make sense? How does that play out in terms of students and parents? And I think they need some time to do that. And then in the final analysis, there's some folks who are gonna, how do you give community voice, right? Our articles say something about that. In terms of voting and stuff like that. So I think we need to, process all of that. I've spoken on it.
I think you make some really good points, Herb, but I also firmly believe that we can't move forward. We can't continue to wish away that the ability to improve education and improve funding for education in our district alone without beginning this process. And this is exactly what this rubrics is for us to take careful consideration instead of 15 options to narrow it down to a few and look at all of those and seek that engagement. But unless we start tonight, we're never going to get to that point where we're going to make improvements, we're going to make progress.
Yeah, I get it, Kelly. And we got a budget to put together, right? We got to get a fiscal year 2027 budget prepared and on the ballot that makes sense, it's reasonable, and that helps support student learning. I'm just worried that if we dive into the rubric kind of thing and, there'll be an outcome of that. I don't know how many options could be chosen, but that's the road we'll be going down.
Right. And I think we
And
need to move on her. And I understand you're coming into it. This is your first year here. We've been talking about this for years. And we finally found a path forward. We've done the portrait of a learner. We've gained valuable information there. We've got you in Montpelier, which is incredible. You can feed us even more information. And we have to start really making plans here rather than just waiting and waiting, which is what we've done for far too long, because we're at the point now where we have taxpayers saying to us, do something.
And I don't have any problem exploring these options, Karen. I really
Great,
don't.
then let's do it.
I really don't. But it has to be done right. It has to be done in a thoughtful way. I think it needs to involve the community. And
Absolutely.
I think you need to have this information together before you just say, okay, community, what do you think about all this?
So we can't present the 15 options that we have looked at here. We've had almost a month to really digest it. We've had a very careful plan that Erin sent out for us, in which we look at each one of the major categories and weigh them. And look at all the plans. I think that that's a lot of work done for the community because they voted for us to do that. And now it's time for us to move forward.
You think that the community supports these options?
We don't know until we get to the number of options that we're all going to agree upon, and then we seek
further information from the community.
And I guess I would say that we're putting the cart before the horse. If you don't have the evaluative process at least scoped out, I think it's gonna end badly. I hear you. I respect what you're saying, Kathy. I really, really do. And others who feel that. I'm curious. What others feel?
I've got Liz with her hand up.
I'd like to highlight some ways where I feel like you mentioned Roxbury. There's also Virgins, and there's feedback over there that they were able to meet the needs of more students with some of the choices they made. And now a school that was closed care facility. That I think that's a wonderful example of how, it's anecdotal, but I've heard feedback that students that needed more or that needed even more advanced programming, that they were able to do more with some of these choices. And I feel like community voice has come in many forms. Community voice has come leading us to where we are right now in their voting on our budgets. It's come to us from families that have come to the board over the 8 years saying what they need for their students and what their expectations are of how their needs will be met. Whether it's around safety, academics, specialized supports, they want languages, they want art, they want lots of diverse programming. We've had feedback from staff, and at our board retreat, we had feedback from administration across the district. So I don't feel like we're doing this without any input from our community.
Yeah, I respect that. And any other, if I'm the only one, I'd like to know that, somehow.
Herb, I think as I'm reading through this, it just speaks so deeply to me about how much you care about our communities and how much you care about our students. And as someone with a kid that's gonna start school in just a couple of years,
Oh my goodness, yes.
it's speaking right directly to my.
Yeah,
However, I do agree with Kathy and with Liz. If we look at the work that's been done over several years, we've let go of 43 positions. That's a lot of work that's been done. There's conversations with the community that were had before you or I were on the board. I think it's imperfect, but we have to start somewhere, because the alternative is either we have to let go of 26 teachers for fiscal year 27, or our budget doesn't pass. So to me, I think there's so many reasons to say no. I think there's so many reasons for us to say now's not the right time. We don't have enough information. The process is imperfect. And I just fear that if we let perfection get in the way of progress, that we won't be doing right by our students in the long term. And my last thought here is, we are a policy and governance board, and I spend a couple hours every month at board meetings. And I think that makes me know a lot about education, but I don't think that makes me an expert. And I think when our experts in our superintendent and our school administration are excited about things like grade banding and the impact that that will have on PLCs and the impact that that will have on student equity, that means more to me than my own personal. So I'm really excited to start this discussion and see where it takes us.
With that said, I do think I just only had a few minutes to read.
yeah, I'm sorry about that.
And as a clinician and a social worker, I have to chime in, and there are several things that are noted in perhaps right up that obviously I know we all are considering. Kids on a bus too long. I always will be the voice for people coming from a lower socioeconomic class that will feel again like they have no choice in this. And I I think we can do both. I think we can do what's being suggested tonight. And I think we can also keep all of these things in mind and looking at some of the options. I mean, some of the options look really exciting to me as a parent. I also have to say, and it's not to make anybody feel bad I recently saw a list that came out of the top 30 schools in the state and high schools, and we don't make that list. And I was concerned about that. And I think sometimes why we don't make that list is because we've had to make cuts to special classes or to arts or to other things that really bolster people's experience. I have a child that chose not to go here because of the things that weren't being able to be offered. So I kind of look at it like, if we don't do something, we might not have anything, not to be melodramatic. You
Yeah, I
know,
hear it.
so I hear what you're saying. I respect this, and a lot of it is very interesting to me. But I also think we do have to start,
Yeah,
or somebody will do it for us.
I hear you. But you know, I think what you raised is an interesting sort of perspective. The what we do to help kids learn in an elementary school, my sense is really, I mean, it's really kind of different. High school, there really is a need for making sure you have deep and broad
Although, can I just say something? I've been at Beaman for almost 20 years. I have kids, sorry, my kids are all 5 years apart. And when my son first went to Beaman, there was 2 or 3 school plays. There was music, there were a lot of things that just don't happen anymore. And so I have seen a change over the years. I think that elementary, those things are really important. They support children in developing those skills before they get here. Kids are never part of plays and then they come here and you offer them a play. That feels a little terrifying to some
Yeah.
kids. So I think it, you know, I don't want to give away what option I love, but I think there are some really good opportunities to keep these things in mind, but also do it before we're told what we have to do.
Yeah,
I'm a control freak, so I like to be out of it. No,
you know, one of the things that I think was unfortunate, you know, in the process, because we've been down this road before. And, you know, there was a proposal to consolidate, you know,
Yeah.
the 2 districts, the Jews in Manatee. And I think it was unfortunate the way that played out. I think we lost some real opportunities there. And unfortunately, I think part of the reason for that, I mean, there might have been lots of different, but part of the reason was that, you know, folks were very concerned about their community schools. And they saw that process as really trying to circumvent, you know, the folks who had a right to vote, you know, in their town. And so we never got that opportunity. I'm worried that that same dynamic, I'm worried about that dynamic again, because there are things I think we could do to help improve learning. We gotta find some financial alternative. We have to find the finances to do it. Which.
Might I make a suggestion?
What's that?
I would love for you to come to some community engagement meetings, because I think your ability to connect with the community would be a huge asset to our team. And I share your concerns about the community not supporting the options we go forward with. But I also don't want to go in with the assumption that we're going to close schools when we haven't even started going through the rubric or the evaluation process yet. So I'd be curious to see what the board supports, and before we start talking about, are we closing schools, are we not, let's just get a temperature check for where we're at as a board.
That's fair enough. If no one's interested in this,
I think
There we go.
I'm just gonna reframe that before you start, in that no one is disinterested in this work, is the feeling I'm getting. I think what the issue is that we are feeling the pressure to start somewhere. This rubric helps us whittle down to options that feel much more manageable out of 16, right?
I get it.
Okay, so I know you hear me and I'm hearing you, and I think the common ground is finding what's gonna make good sense for our district. And the path isn't perfect, like Amanda said. And there is still time to do all of this.
Well, that maybe is the point, okay? Let's say we narrow, the action stand to whatever number. What's gonna follow from that?
Another
Okay.
process,
Hmm?
another process, like this isn't the end all.
No,
be all,
I
right?
understand, but in terms of the process itself and to give communities a meaningful voice, I think you need to do so. So let's say, we choose 4 options or whatever happened. Are you open to following this kind of a process?
I mean, maybe
Right,
not
I already
word
said
for
that.
word, but definitely a process.
Yeah.
Well, I know there's gonna be a process, but let's say
Yeah.
some of these options involves closing a school or disenrolling kids, okay? Are we gonna try to measure the value? Are we gonna try to compare it to where people were going? Are we gonna take long-term as well as short-term financial decisions in mind?
I think we have to do all of that. This can't be done unless that's done. But I do think, and you said something earlier where we've been down this road before, and I'm gonna respectfully disagree with that statement. Only because I think the process that a previous board did before was put all the apples in one basket, which was a merger. And that came from the Levinson report and all sorts of other stuff to make that option the one they went with. To my knowledge, we haven't done this. We haven't evaluated 16 things, and as a board said, these couple feel really good. How are we gonna engage with that? I don't think we've done that. And I think it's our due diligence to do that work here, and then to figure out how we're gonna make all this other stuff. All the other metrics, all the other community voice come in, so at the end of the day, when we're presenting something. It's reflecting back to the community. Our values as well as theirs. And is doing better for our students.
Well, I think we all have that kind of goal,
Okay then.
right? Sarah, I think we all have that kind of goal. And we just it's just a matter of how we think we can best accomplish that. And I'm worried about, I'm just worried.
Me too,
Yeah.
me too.
Sarah, when I went to Beaman, we didn't have any musicals.
30 years later.
Anyway, yeah, I mean, I think that,
Did they have music? I'm just kidding. I said that out loud.
I don't know, I think that, I think there's some real value in exploring all of, all of these options, as a board, because we owe it to the taxpayers, we owe it to the kids to do that. I disagree with you a little bit, Erin, about how it's playing out. Because we've kind of played this game before, where there were, it wasn't just a merger. It was also repurposing and
Yeah.
this document is a public document now.
Yeah.
People in the community, know that there are 15 or whatever options that we're considering. And I'm just really concerned that, and as I said before, is that if we don't do this carefully, if we get out ahead of the taxpayers, we're not gonna be supported where we land. And not necessarily for valid reasons. Because a lot of some of the things that were argued 5 years ago, in the Virgins thing, there's some really valid stuff there. But it never saw the light of day. So I just think as a board, we have to be really careful about that, because we make some sort of wrong step. And then we're just spinning our wheels. We'll come up with, 2 or 3 options, and none of them will be acceptable to the taxpayers. And frankly, I don't, been around this for a while now. I think that if we think that we're gonna come up with a proposal that will drastically sort of, reorganize the district for 2027. I'm just not sure that is feasible, no matter how great an idea it is. And the other concern I have is what's going on. Well, two other things I just want to say is with what's happening in the state. I mean, I think it's really important, whatever we do with this rubric is that is, you know, to keep a very close eye on what's happening at the state level to inform us and hopefully through this work, we can inform them too. So.
Can I just add, you know, it was super helpful getting the summary of models, additional financial information. There were some big questions that I still have that weren't part of this. You know, there was inconsistent coverage of where central office is gonna be. So if it moves, we don't know what the estimated cost per square footage would be, depending on where it would go. So I don't feel that I have enough information to comfortably and honestly put a number on something. That was one piece, and then also,
Hold on one second, sorry. Sorry, Kristen.
No, that's okay. And then, also it had indicated that there would be significant tax impact. Well, what would that tax impact? What is that tax impact? And I had a question with regard to the presentation where there was a call out saying that there was more savings from facilities and less from personnel. Is that backwards? Because based on the financial information that was provided, it looked backwards. So I really feel very strongly that I need more information, more succinct information as an elected, board member to represent our communities and, it doesn't feel sufficient enough and to be doing all of this. And again, with everything hanging up in the air in Montpelier, I really feel that we need to have time to have the information that we need to make these decisions. And I just don't feel that I'm at that point.
Can I follow up a little bit on what Kristen was saying, because I was thinking along the same lines. And then I had a communication with Mike last evening, which sounded to me like, making some about information, so what sort of financial information that we didn't have a chance to talk today. And so I didn't circulate it, but I have it. Because I agree with Kristen. I think there's a lot of assumptions that, Patrick and Floyd put out there in the presentation. We started to go through some of those questions at the retreat, but we just didn't have time, right? So I put together the whole goal. So I'm going to circulate something here. The whole goal of it is really kind of twofold. And first is to get some idea of what our baseline is, financial. Our financials are baseline. I would think that would be this current fiscal year, but maybe I'm wrong on that. And to really get a good understanding of all the different pieces. So that you have the ability to measure what the options, the financial impacts of the options are going to be against that against the baseline. And the whole goal, I think, is to think about, we have we're sort of focused on having one solution. And the solution to FY 27 is to do some stuff with the elementary schools. And I personally don't think I have the information to, that might be the case. Maybe there's nothing else we can do. But I don't think I have the information to reach that conclusion. And so that's why I would ask that the administration help put together some answers to these these financial information questions.
Can I-
Thank you.
I wonder if there's another way to maybe reframe the step that I think the agenda was proposing we do. So when I read the agenda here, it's, a discussion and the action as stated. We haven't made a motion, but at least on the agenda is to identify options for educational delivery to advance for further study. I think that's a really important component, is that this is identifying options for continued study, much of which may reveal things that they may or may not work as we continue to get a clear picture of the financial and educational consequences of each of those. I don't think this is a done deal in either way. And in some ways, I might even point out that, yes, we have 15 or 16 options, but they're really variations on the same 1, 2, 3 themes. And so I maybe ask this as a general question, but in some ways I look at this as a step to eliminate options that we think are obviously bad. Right? Of this potential options, which are the ones that we as a board think it's really not worth pursuing at all? And I wonder, Herb, since you've been voicing some sort of strong opposition, like, of the options that we have, do you share a concern at this moment that if we proceeded with the winnowing of those options, that there's an option that is present right now that you really want to support that could get thrown out at this moment? I don't get that sense. I get the sense that there's concern about the core of those principles that are inherent to each of those, right? Be it grade banding or school closure, right? And so in that case, I think being able to eliminate options that we think are bad, leaving us with a smaller set of options that are worth identifying. Are they bad? Are they good? Will they work? Will they not? Is actually a really helpful step.
Yeah, I get that. What I tried to express and didn't do it very well, I think, is I think there's a step before that, Mike. Because I think we focused on doing stuff with elementary schools as really our only option for dealing with the FY 27 budget. That's all that's been put on the table. And I'm not ready to do that. I would like to see our baseline. And, when we get around to narrowing the options, I want to see how those compare to the baseline. It also gives you an opportunity to take a look at, well, maybe there's some other options. I don't know if there are any other options. But it's pretty impossible to figure out an alternative if you don't have the data. So that's where I'm coming from, and I hope whatever we do with the rubrics and stuff like that, I'm hoping that we can get this kind of information so that we have some solid information to make some decisions on.
I just want to say that it is such a beautiful thing that we have so many people that care so deeply about the education of our children, that we're able to have such a passionate discussion tonight. And I very much respect my colleagues who do not feel that they have enough data or information to start saying these are options that they want to evaluate. I think since we are, in my opinion, early in the process for looking at options, I feel comfortable with the data that I have to say these are options I want to evaluate further, knowing that we're not going to make any sort of final decision tonight, especially when looking at the fact that we have to have a budget drafted and presented to the town by February. So I'm not sure how much more productive discussion there is to be had. I think there's people that have very good reason to think that we don't have enough data, and people that have very good reason to think that we do. So I'm just curious, Erin, if there's a step that we can take to determine whether or not we do want to look at the rubric and start evaluating options, or whether we need to go back to the drawing board and get more intel.
It would just be a thumb.
Okay.
A what? I'm sorry.
Thumbs. Yeah, just.
I know I missed the last 2 board meetings, I apologize. What came out of meeting with the other boards from, I guess, the Northwest, like? Yeah. Did they hinted at the idea of some type of merger, because I know we share. You know, sports and things like that, and. Do you know how they're doing on their side of things?
I do, and there's been no appetite for further discussion about merging. Middlebury District has been working to reduce their own school load, so with Ripton being closed and absorbed into other schools, they're being really purposeful about what that means for that building and that community. And then Shoreham and Bridport have been in communications about consolidating their two schools. Virgins really doesn't have much other flexibility between Harrisburg and Virgins, as far as I'm aware, and I can't speak for them because I don't know all the details, but no, there really hasn't been any appetite to approach that again. I think
Everybody's kind of,
everyone's in the same boat, and
except for the
my
populated areas.
right, and my sense is that we're all working to do what's best for our districts in light of so many unknowns.
You know. And I will say, inaction is way worse than. So. Making, trying to do the first step is best thing.
Yeah.
I just wanted to clarify again, because I think in reading that what Herb just distributed, someone could read that and assume that the options that were presented were mine. Not a single one of them is mine. All of the grade banding options were brainstormed by a representative group of teachers, support staff, administrators, the advisory council. All of the other ones were brainstormed by board members. And the two that are just sort of the benchmark are the status quo. You have a status quo where we simply apply the staffing rules like we're applied to everything else, and you have a status quo where we sort of disregard the staffing rules and make reductions needed to hit a financial target. So
I
I
hear
just
what
want to
you're
be very
saying.
clear about that.
I hear what you're saying, Superintendent. At the same time, I don't think that's being fair to the advisory council. They are not a part of this. They work for you. They're your advisory council, I assume.
Herb, I just wanna, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I just wanna be very careful that that we're not putting responsibility on Patrick that isn't his to bear. I think we as a board have a responsibility to evaluate the options in front of us, and Patrick is the avenue for providing data, and I don't want public backlash.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Fair enough. What I distributed was simply a request for financial
Gotcha.
information.
Thank you so much.
And I'm sorry, Superintendent, if the request it was misconstrued, okay? It's simply a request for financial information that I think, baseline FY 26, comparison to, options and changes and some of the assumptions that were made in the presentation. There it is.
I think you'll find, Herb, that a lot of these questions are answered in the way we've laid out our financials and have been presented to us over a series of presentations for finances. And I think if the questions you're asking are in relation to a specific option, that we haven't done that work in terms of really factoring out all this stuff for each option. If that's what you're wondering, then I think that work would be a tremendous lift, right, for 16 options. Less of a lift for exploring 4 to 6.
Yeah, so there were two parts to the request.
Yep.
One was baseline stuff. And some of the assumptions that were made in the presentation.
Yep.
That I don't think were clear. I just don't understand some of the calculations. Maybe other folks are better able to understand that, but I couldn't make the numbers work. And I didn't understand what some of the terms meant. I don't know, there's an 11 point whatever 9% assumption for health insurance. The Green Mountain Care Board just did a number on health insurance rates. I don't know whether that's changed. I just asked. If folks don't want the information. There's nothing I can do about it.
This information doesn't.
That we don't want it. I don't. And I wanted to ask a question, if that's okay.
Yeah.
I wasn't here. But the last time that you looked at consolidation, or this board looked at consolidation, you were presented with a lot of information before that. The Levinson report you've referenced. I also wondered at that time, had you, I don't recall if we solicited what's most important to our constituents in each of our communities.
The only two people here who would have done that work are Liz and Brad.
And did that happen before?
They had, there was a committee.
Proposals.
Yeah, I mean, there was a committee that was set up consisting of school board members from both districts and community members, teachers, you know.
Because one of the
And
questions,
let me just.
Oh,
let me
sorry.
just finish. I mean, and we had these committee meetings. Monthly or bi-weekly or something, sort of like these to, with a. With an agenda and a process. The problem though is that the process was really flawed. And so, for example, they tried to do some, community outreach through, so this is kind of right after COVID was still an issue, and so it was remote, and people would convene and would have meetings, and a lot of data was generated by the meetings, but the data never made it into any of the reports. So it was just, it was very, flawed process, and I think, as I was saying before, the notion of doing the merger got off to a very bad start, and there was not a lot of opportunity, for the committee to sort of articulate pros and cons in a way that the community was willing to understand.
Liz, do you want to add to that?
I do. Before we got to even the idea of a merger, there were community meetings across all of our schools and individually, and then it all came together in a district-wide meeting. We went out to, I know I attended a Democratic meeting, right? Just went to where people were already having meetings to answer questions. There was a ton of outreach as an opportunity. A lot of it was just to hear, even if I didn't have all of the answers, just helping to make awareness out there. And the data from the merger committee was so thorough. They had a study done on bus rides, which is what I'm relying on in this. This is why these new proposals feel accurate to me about keeping the bus rides the same as they are now, by adding the bus to every town being included in the financials, because they actually routed it out. They included all the students that could ride the bus across both of our districts and what the times would be for each one of those students. And not all students actually ride the bus. So it was really more thorough and very conservative on how long those rides would be if that situation were to happen. So it was, I mean, they went through their student population, and it was so detailed and so thorough. And I think Brad's right that we weren't able to get the message, like get all of the information out. However, I think there's much more awareness now of the financial crunch and what that would mean for programming. And at the time, my perspective of it was that nobody had even considered merger or even thought about that when we started that process. And there was also reaching out across we had teachers, anybody could submit a proposal. Like the list that we have now, it was actually anybody across our district could submit a proposal for an idea of what to do next to be evaluated by Nate and what that would look like. So that was a really neat process. just open to everybody to submit an idea. So, yeah, I'd say there was lots of all of these things. And I was impressed that we went from nobody having thought about it to a couple years later, even that a third of our communities did say yes to it. And that's a pretty big, um, I thought that was also big. So it wasn't just that it was voted down, it was that a third of people thought that it could have been a good idea and that it would have been a good idea. And that's significant too.
Thanks, Liz. Yeah, I don't know if we're involving public in our board discussion, so. We hadn't decided that before we started.
I'll just need to Herb for passing this out, and you know this as well, and I've sent it to a couple people as well, like, I think we're really committed to try to make the financial information more transparent. So I've been working on, very briefly, a draft of a website that at least takes that and really spells out like, where is every dollar spent, where are FTE? So I briefly talked with Floyd before the meeting, but the intention very much is to make sure that we as a board, but maybe as importantly, the community as a whole has direct access to that, as a way to really relatively easily and more accessibly interact with the $35 million budget. So I think we're really committed to that and to trying to make that as approachable as possible. And so especially, you know, I can draw from this document, but if there are other thoughts as we build that, that you're like, oh, that's maybe useful, maybe not, but this would also be useful. Like if you keep those coming to me or anybody else does, like we can build that. I don't know, I sent a draft just now to you, Patrick. I don't know if people want to see like what, it's very drafty. Okay, a little while, but at some point you'll see like it's, you know, you hover over how many school-based staff there are and it tells you the dollar amount, the number of FTE. And then you can do that for every one of the categories in the Levinson format and see where each dollar is going. And it's pretty straightforward to generate, so.
And I also just want to say, Herb, in the first document that you passed out, this process for evaluating options, I think having this is gonna make our process better. So. Thank you.
Mike, I thought that interface is kind of pretty cool, at least the first take at it. The, especially I think for community members.
Yeah.
Not so much for us. I mean, I think it's helpful for us, but because if we're thinking about alternative ways of funding things, knowing where each dollar is, doesn't necessarily stimulate the creative process.
Exactly.
But for community members to be able to see, there, you know, 12 teachers that, you know, Moncton, this is what they're paid. I mean,
There's that aspect of it. As a board member. Again, I get back to, you know, we really only have kind of one general option on the table for meeting our FY 27 budget, and that's dealing with communities. I feel it's incumbent personally to see if there are alternatives, and I don't know how to do that without the information that I was looking for.
I see your hand up, but I'm not ignoring you. I just wanted to offer, I mean, we do have, Nancy had her hand up as part of the public. We have public online. I don't know if it feels valuable for people to insert a public comment before we start evaluating options, or if people would want to hold off and keep our public comment where it is. It's a board decision about that, so
What's your recommendation there?
I'm not going to recommend, I'm gonna ask the board to tell me what they'd like to do.
I would love to, oh,
You want to
Sorry.
hold it?
I personally think it's that.
Hold it.
Another meeting.
So
What?
on the spot decision,
I-
people need more thinking time.
I would love to hear from the community beforehand. Okay.
So Sarah, did you hear the offer?
I think so.
So thumbs up if yes, you'd like to hear from the community before you start evaluating. 7, that's the majority. So we're gonna make a friendly amendment out of process to the agenda. And put in a public comment right now. And I'll start with people in the room and then go to those online. Nancy,
Thank you. A couple of things. And I hope they'll be helpful. What I'm hearing from this conversation is that some of you on the board feel strongly that you don't have enough information yet to rank the options that have been presented. And I also am hearing from several of you that you feel strongly that there are, and you heard me speak to this at the beginning of the meeting, that if we're talking about, especially if we're talking about the FY 27 budget and beyond, that there are other options besides educational delivery models that that are pertinent to keeping you at a reasonable tax rate for FY 27, and that those other options aren't among the options that the options you're looking at tonight, or that you were planning to look at tonight, are just about education delivery, use of the facilities, what grade levels and so forth. And so that I think is what you're struggling with. And so part of the solution might be to hold off on ranking the options that are in front of you. Have some thought put into what additional options, especially around for FY 27, you would want to consider besides educational delivery. And once you get a wider array of possible options, then, and get some information that people feel they're missing, then go to the ranking that you've been talking about.
thanks Nancy. Karen? Sorry.
That's okay, thanks. I'm Karin. I'm a select board member in Starksboro. I went to Mount Abe and Robinson and a few other institutions after. Good ones, not like they put me away, don't worry. So I was also a member of the Levinson Report. The group that met, as Liz discussed. And I think that the value of community input cannot be diminished. The schools are center to our community. They really are. In Starksboro, we had a unanimous vote in 2022. We held a special vote in June 2022, and we had standing room only in our gymnasium. And there was a unanimous vote in support of maintaining our town school. It's that really, truly important to our residents. So it makes me very uncomfortable that there would be an outnumbered vote situation about moving forward with a rank situation, because when I tried to voice my opinion at a Bristol community meeting in 2022, I was told that I wasn't able, you said that there were community meetings and there was outreach to community members. I was told that I could not speak at the Bristol meeting because I was not a resident, when the impacts were to my community school. And I was not allowed to voice my input. And that was the process. And that really did not feel democratic or representative. I did speak at the end of the meeting. They held a time for comments at the end, but it didn't feel like a true democratic process, which I know we're all striving for in representing the people who have voted for us. I do have questions about the information or the lack of information. I also have questions about the spending. I know that we received ARPA money, and I'm so grateful. And I want all of our buildings to be accessible. And I was really concerned that, for example, one of the reasons to consider disuse of Robinson School was that it's not accessible. But the money that was used to create a front entryway at the Robinson Elementary School did not continue, it did not create a continued path. It's a ramp to nowhere. We had money to do an accessibility project and it didn't do that job. And I just don't understand why. How are the decisions being made after the budget's passed? How are these decisions of priority being made where we put a ton of money that we have the gift of opportunity to use, and then we don't complete the project in a way that secures the use of the building for all people? And then that would be one of the reasons that it would be on the chopping block. So I just want to hold that out there, that I think we need more information, and I'd like to consider the sources of information, and I want to make sure that we include community input.
Thanks, Karen.
And I appreciate your time. You're all working hard. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else online who'd like to give a public comment at this time?
With the hand up at meet.
No, I think that's just us.
Is that cursor?
Okay, I'm not seeing any other hands.
May I ask a clarifying question of that public comment as to whether, sorry, just clarifying, not like responsive.
Okay,
Was that a select board meeting or was that a meeting run by MAUSD?
That was the school board meeting at Holly Hall in Bristol.
I would clarify that it was all community members, perhaps, that we did the presentation and then there were questions after, perhaps, like it was an informational, right? Like it wasn't an open question forum for everybody, if I'm remembering correctly, right?
No, there was information, and then there were questions and comments offered to Bristol residents. And when I raised my hand and asked, they said, "Oh no, you can't speak. This is a Bristol community forum. You can wait to the end." That was.
I just would like to apologize for that. I'm sorry,
Thank you.
I don't remember that, and obviously that wouldn't be how we would want to work, because what happens to one of our students in one of our towns and one of our community members affects all of us. So I apologize that you had that experience. I'm sorry about that.
Thank you.
I think too, it's worth noting that our processes have changed a lot since 2022. I think we've continually strived to demonstrate good communication. We've changed a lot of things about how we give out information, what information we talk about at the board, how accessible it is, how readable it is. We put a lot of work into that. So that's been a big change since 2022. I can't speak to all the things, all the points that were raised. But I think it's just really important to hold in mind that this is a way for us to figure out what even makes good sense moving forward. I'm not sure how else to do that, because in lieu of any other option presented, we're saying, oh, there's all these alternatives. I don't know where they are. I don't know where the alternatives are. What I'm willing to do, though, is take the information we get from us today to say what makes good sense to evaluate and see and follow a process and get more information and do financial dives onto those, see what it looks like. And if nothing feels right, we pivot. This is not a hard and fast. We have to bake in flexibility to these, and we have to be willing to have a plan B and a plan C if needed.
Can I ask you a question? There was a public comment about other options beyond educational. What was the delivery model? Delivery model, and I'm just not a teacher. Okay, so I don't know what that even means. And so maybe an email to us or something where or if anybody knows, I would be curious. At looking at that. I'm not familiar.
Yeah, and that was the rationale. for why I'm asking for that financial information. I don't know how to construct an alternative to dealing, for you, instead of a community school, without understanding some of the assumptions that were made in that presentation. And just some of the, basic information about what are the teachers are doing certain things.
And I
Like,
hear that.
I don't know how to construct an alternative,
Right.
and maybe there isn't. But
In
I don't
looking
know
at
even how to
these,
begin.
And you did spark my curiosity, you're guilty of that, I'm just kidding. But also just knowing our constituents in New Haven and what they're most concerned about. Several of the models, I don't think any of them would go for. So I just want, I want to be able to speak. Big concern is the grades and who goes where and where I know that's a big one. In fact, I know a family that's divided between sixth grade and seventh grade and who goes where. And so I just want more information. That sparked my curiosity. I hear what you're saying. But I also know that it's tense.
Yeah.
I will just offer, there are two options that are before you that are alternatives to changing the education delivery model. Status quo and status quo that saves 3 million. Those don't change the education delivery model.
Right, but that isn't an alternative to saving $3 million. That's what I'm talking about. I'm trying to figure out an alternative that will put us in a decent position to offer a budget that we think is reasonable. So it's not just, okay, well, let's just keep things the way it is. I'm looking at how to construct an alternative that will save us some real money. And I don't know how to begin that without knowing the information.
Well, that's why, Patrick and Floyd aren't going to do 15 different budgets for us. That's like a big ask for them. So personally, I'd like to do the voting, because I think we're going in circles. Right, it's a big ask for Floyd to come up with 20 different resolutions on a budget and for different schools and things like that. We do the same thing with our normal budget that gets presented to us in November. We try to whittle it down, and then Patrick presents to us. And then we give him feedback, and he comes back and he manipulates certain things or adds or subtracts, and we kind of whittle it down.
Yeah, I get it.
I think if I understood him correctly, you mentioned that, and I could have misunderstood you, but I'll talk louder, sorry. Have we explored all the options for savings in our budget? Status quo, as Patrick just said, all of our schools are open, we're offering everything. Have we, I think that's what your intent was, explore the options outside of changing the way we deliver our education, which could be grade banding, closing schools, et cetera, that are in here. Have we explored all of those? What are those options? And this, which is changing the education delivery model. I think that's what but I could be wrong.
What I was, an example of what I was getting at is, and I don't know if it would work, I don't know if they would agree to it, but if we formed, say, a supervisory union with Addison Northwest, we would still have our board, they would still have their board, we would still have our articles of agreement, they would still have their articles of agreement, and we could collaborate and around roles that we share. Would we, in a case like that, need two superintendents? Would we need two curriculum directors? Would we need two business managers? There might be in that arrangement some big time savings. And parenthetically, the state's about to try to make us do something like that anyway. So what if we said to Addison Northwest, let's just try to explore this and see if we might be able to get the jump on actually doing it, even in time for the FY27 budget. That's not the only example, but that it's one example that isn't about educational delivery models that could save a boatload of money.
Right, yeah, that's what I was getting at. It's just like a different model, something different with our
Right, so not to belabor this, but I have heard some, Mike's approach was interesting. Like, are there any, we just mean, can we start somewhere? You know, I want more information, but I also like, are there any that we all just know we do not want? Or is that sort of, you know?
This will tell us that.
Yeah, I look at it as an exercise. It doesn't mean we can't introduce other ideas and elicit, you know, information, input from our community.
Can I ask you for clarification?
Yep.
And then I'll shut up.
Sure.
Appreciate you.
I need you, Meredith. So I laid out what I thought financial information would be helpful for me. Is that request going to be considered? And you know, if it's just coming from me, well, is it going to be, just point of clarification, you know, is it going to be considered?
We didn't plan to vote on that today. There's been no sort of discussion on this proposal. We just got it right now. I think it'd be for us to say that in the context of 16 options. This information exists. You can book a meeting with Floyd. You can go look at all the stuff that the majority of what you're asking for, either Mike or Floyd has. And we've been presented that over a series of meetings last budget cycle. So this information does exist. If your ask is in the context of these options, I think the no to 16, yes to a handful, right? Like, so the context of your ask is really important. But you are welcome at any time to book time with Floyd and go dig in.
Okay. Fair enough.
Which
We'll spend some quality time together.
I'll ask you to do some homework first. You've got every nickel broken down by school and by category in the budget. Financials that you received in this packet, all 24 pages.
I 43, actually. But it left unsaid is some other issues that I want to talk to you.
I'm in.
Another point is the finance committee, which you're on, we never got a chance to meet after, you know, prior to this board meeting, after the delivery of all the options. And I'm sure as we start to investigate not only these options, the finance committee, we're gonna dig down, we're gonna ask more like they're doing right now.
Fair enough.
Can we vote?
Yeah. Thumbs up if you're willing to continue with the evaluation process for this evening. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, that's majority. Okay, so we are gonna continue with that process, knowing that this is the first step of a much larger and longer process, that this isn't a hard and fast thing. This is a temperature gauge. It's telling us what we definitely don't want to see or explore. We would like more information about. I want to be very clear to anyone in communities listening that this isn't us saying anything about any potential anything. This is us doing our due diligence to not explore 16 options that mean nothing, but to explore a handful of options that do mean something and do more work to figure out if those ones aren't right. To figure out what is right. It's very important. I think that that's what this board is saying. I'm gonna hand you a slip of paper. Liz and Barb's not here. Liz, I will figure out a way to get you a number. Again, I don't share it with anyone else. This,
What are we writing down?
you're not writing, you're gonna go in, so you're gonna take the options that were given to you as a presentation, right? Those 16 options, correct? I'm gonna share this rubric with you. The number you get is gonna correspond to a sheet in that Google form. You will fill out the rubric on the sheet that corresponds with your number. At the end, it'll populate a total for us on a master spreadsheet. And the top choices will present themselves out of that.
I don't understand, but I'll figure it out.
Take your number.
I mean, is it number 1 to 16 or? is
No,
it,
no, board members,
Board
there's only
member,
13
oh.
board members, yeah,
I see,
You'll be number like.
Sorry.
Or two.
yeah.
whatever, assigned number.
Yeah.
It sounds good.
But the
Could you-
point. Yeah, Liz,
Oh.
I'll
Could,
stop.
could you
I
give
don't-
one to Floyd and have him email it to me? My number?
if that's what you choose.
Some. That might be easy.
And Aaron, to be clear, it's 1 to 5 in terms of the rankings.
1 to 5,
And 5
everything's
is-
in the rubric.
And 5 is in favor.
You will see, yep, you'll see on the rubric, all the everything is laid out for you in terms of
Thanks for laying that out.
what it means.
I struggled with. I was
Just want to make sure we're all on the
Dead.
same page.
Yeah,
When you, you'll see when you put.
I'll figure it out. I'll try to figure it out.
Thanks, Aaron.
I don't get.
Oh, really?
No. I feel nice. I should have picked one.
Yeah.
I'd be like obsessive all my life. Maybe it's 4. It's not, it's like 70 kids, I got, why not? Yeah. Darn, I should have picked up one.
even just if that was the project, I was not gonna.
Oh, be like,
Yes. 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 Can you take that?
Yep.
Thank you. All right, here comes the rubric.
That's coming to our email, right?
Yep, and you'll have to use your MAUSD email to do it.
Okay.
Your
And
time limit?
Yes.
Not staying here all night with you.
are we gonna like have the options up and then vote option by option as we look at
Oh,
them?
ma'am, you're doing this on your own.
All right, heck yeah, I'm sorry, let's go.
Liz, it's Katrina. I emailed it to you.
Thank you so much, Katrina.
Can we go to our sheet number?
Sheet number that corresponds with the blue piece of paper you just got. You'll go to that sheet. And you'll start weighing your options.
So. And it's 1 through,
Please.
1 through 5.
Yes.
1 being hate it, 5 being love it.
And I don't have all
To that,
Yes.
yeah, that was very basic, but you got it.
You have them?
Oh, I can read them right now. I've got it.
They have other people's tabs and you won't know.
Yeah, just
They
go
all
to
got
your
raised
own
up.
tab.
Oh, is she going? It's just. Compare that one, I see you, that's all. So.
One through 5.
I have no idea what's.
Take your, you're in the form, yes, sir?
Yes, I had it in the phone.
On the bottom, there's a row that says sheets.
Right.
Go to the number that's on your blue paper for sheet. If
Right,
you're
there's a
number
bunch of
8,
blanks, you know, for
okay,
A,
that's what you're filling in with 1 through 5, ranking,
there we go, 1 through 5,
yes,
got it,
5 high, 1 low.
right.
Yeah.
Got. I wasn't listening carefully,
Okay.
I did not understand.
Okay,
And then make a profile. On the big screen, can you put the criteria for what healthy kids, finances, community impact, feasibility and sustainability?
yep.
So we can, to minimize what we're doing.
When you're done with that, share.
And we need to rank these
Guidance,
all 16?
please. If you know for certain that there's options you don't like, you could go through and just put ones in. No one would know.
Yeah, although you should probably try to evaluate fairly on each criteria, because we're gonna take an average.
Yes,
And
don't do that.
And you don't wanna, you wanna be honest throughout the process.
And can we also just everybody double check that they're on their sheet for their number? So like sheet 1 would be for the person with number 1, sheet 11 is for the person with number 11.
Yeah, exactly.
All right,
Share
Patrick,
with the whole.
yeah, Patrick's gonna put up, the criterion.
Put it on the screen or?
Please.
Okay. Okay, just.
So when we say building healthy kids, what are we talking about? That's what's going up on the screen.
We share screen so Liz can see.
Aaron, last thing, actually, no, that's mine. Okay, sorry. If a number shows up that is not between 1 or 5, will your spreadsheet recognize that?
Yes, because they're weighted. They're currently weighted in your thing, so the value you put in will take the percentage that is assigned to that value and weight it.
Okay, so my sustainability column is, pulling in as percentages and not as full numbers. I don't know if that's happening for everybody, but I reformatted.
That's a Michael question.
Yeah, we should make sure that that's.
Can we just make sure that all sustainability columns are populating as numbers, not percentages?
Your cat's broken.
So.
Yeah, you should be able to,
I've changed it. I just wanna make sure if I'm not doing something different than what everybody else
yes,
is
if yours doesn't look like a number, like a number 0.00, tell us, and then we should fix that.
Thanks, I fixed it, but
Otherwise, it will take the average of that. not
that, so my 5 would be a 0.05,
Which
which
would
is
be
much worse than.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks for catching that.
Can I ask, so there are numbers appearing on,
Yes.
right? That's other people entering stuff, is that it?
Are you on the correct?
You're not on the right.
I have no idea what I'm doing.
I'm up on my screen.
I'm gonna come in.
Thanks, Mike.
Yeah, I'm all done.
Thank you, Mike.
You're seeing, you're seeing.
I have no idea.
And you're good. So you should be on whatever your number is.
It's in lobby.
Go to this here. Exactly, and then here, that's like where you fill in and exclusively fill that in, and then what is gonna happen is across all of these things. It's gonna take the average of everybody's, and then on this one, it's gonna show us like, what did we look like? So your information gets automatically put in with the rest of us if you fill it in.
Yeah.
So like for scenario A1, there's 5 separate categories, each one gets a score 1 to 5. So I'd be like, yeah, this is really sustainable, or this is really good for finances, one being like, this is the worst choice. And then you do that for them all, just and it gives us a score for everything.
Oh, yeah.
Or you can abstain.
I might.
I
understand. 17.
Yes, of course.
Oh, goodness gracious.
Yeah.
He's just tired.
Bad.
You want me to fix it? You want me to turn the sheets? Okay. I like the phone. And then you're gonna see something that says 1, 2, 3. And click on that. And you can pick the number. Okay. Oh, June.
So sometimes when I enter number, it says percent.
Yeah, let me change that. Yeah, I think a little bit. So we'll gonna also find the data.
Be a good source.
Exactly, and then that way I know what to build the assumptions on to make it like that.
I was able to get rid of it at one point.
All right, I'm just gonna steal this for 1 second.
Yeah, yeah. Whatever.
Select all of these. All of this. We're just gonna make sure they go to format here, number. Number. Then that should not, kind of come back to there for you.
Got it.
Okay, and then that should, those should all be numbers from now on.
Thank you.
You won't have that problem, yeah. Very human.
Oh, it's like. Oh, yeah, South Hill is.
Oh, I see that.
Site, just. This is actually. It's just been a journey, yeah, so much going on. San Francisco. How was that? Yeah, we're in concerts at the end. So that's. Did,
It's a festival, they do it now, like, so you see. To register. So.
No, I know you were checking that out, like you almost like this is real life. Well, this is this one. Yeah. Let's see. Yeah. Yeah, that's great.
So it was.
I love that.
But I have to finish. I have no really huge for it. That's the stuff I'm telling you.
Yeah,
I just, they're like.
every summer,
So that's our goal. We're gonna get there.
it's great. Oh, that's fun. That's good. Yeah.
It's like 30 days.
And the luxury. What do you? Well, yeah. It's like. Really different.
Like, it's like a very, you know, it's special. It is.
And then somebody who can apply, she writes about the budget moves to the actual spine. That's where you see the same, the cost of resisting. It does. This is an act.
How are we doing, everybody?
That's good. Yes.
Are people finished?
Yes. At least on this,
Oh, yeah, you guys know.
Even though
It's not just, that's the do with actual decision. Yeah, so. Yeah.
I don't understand. She's like, absolutely. Choice. 8-year-old is like all about managing it.
When Herb gets back, I'll come over to the master spreadsheet. Or you can jump there now. If you're done, then you can look at which options have risen to the top. You'll see the total weighted score. And then the rank that is signed based on that weighted score. So number one is the highest. Ranked.
Yes, that was screen sharing.
Sure.
Interesting.
Me?
What would you call mine?
Am I messing with everybody?
Oh, number, we can't see it.
What am I gonna do?
With your cursor. Hit the right arrow, there you go. Now we can see the number.
Yeah, I mean. I need input.
No worries. So if I'm reading it right, I pulled the top five. And top five would correlate to option E.
Can I
As-
just make a statement from this?
Yep.
I had difficulty, entering the numbers.
Mhm.
First I had to understand the numbers. Thank you for that. If there were a lot of questions I just didn't see, I in good conscience, I couldn't figure out how to answer.
Okay.
Cause I didn't think I had the information needed to
Okay.
make that choice. So I don't know if that skews it, if you wanna just take out, those answers. That's up to you. I entered some, I entered it to the best of my ability.
What do you think, Mike?
Let's say.
Yeah, mathematically speaking,
Mathematically speaking?
yeah, I don't think it will mess with the Excel formula if nothing's entered.
I entered something in each column.
For every option?
Yep.
Oh,
I just. I can't, in
Okay.
good conscience say that it was responsive to what I think you're looking for.
I think what you entered is your opinion and will be included in the weight.
It's a very, very weak opinion.
Noted. So the number one option, even with that being true, was E. The second was B. Did you say B?
Can you start at
B.
which is the first?
Option E rose to the top as the one to explore looking at.
Okay,
Option B was was the second to explore. The third was 8.1. 4, I.6. Fifth, I.4.1.
5.4.1.
Correct. Again, these aren't hard and fast options. These are, what could we feasibly look at? What do we need more information around? What can we build from? Or where do we need to pivot? Okay?
It's a starting point. I
It's a
think that
starting.
we haven't had, and it's what we absolutely need if we're going to make an improvement. And then we continue to explore other options as they come.
If it feels helpful, Patrick has made copies for us of the admin team rankings for these same options. Yes, what we'll do is we'll have this information in conjunction with what we've said, and we can use a combination of options to continue our work through them. So I will pass these out.
Thank you.
What is no vote? No go vote?
I can explain once that comes in.
So you stated the top 5 options.
Yes.
I'm just struggling with the language to use. I don't want to say like from best to the strongest. How would you like that phrase?
Ranked 1 through 5.
Just rank.
Their weighted rank was 1 through 5.
Okay.
That would be better. Does everyone have a copy of it, or we can get this?
So I'll start by sharing that. Obviously, you can see there's an attempt at anonymity here. much like what you all just did. And I'll add that I'm sharing this with permission from the admin team. So they know that this is being shared tonight and they're comfortable with that. So we were looking to sort of identify what would the top 5 be. So they ranked individually 1 through 5. And we also added this piece of like, while you're looking for your top 5, are there some that you're really concerned about that you just wouldn't want to stick in? Those are the no-go votes. So obviously a lot of no-go votes means there's greater concern amongst the admin team if that is the direction that we're going in, and fewer no-go votes would be a positive. And then beyond that, you can see rankings 1 through 5, 1 being the most desired, 5 being the least desired of their top 5. And then sort of looking at the summary, there's a pretty clear top 3 choices, and those are in green. And there's some notes that sort of articulate why it appears that those are the top 3, just looking numerically, not getting into all the details of the educational programmatic teaching kind of pros and cons. So the top 3 are in green. There was a pretty clear number 4, and that's in yellow. Really hard to differentiate between what would be the top, the 5th choice. I think an argument could be made for any of the ones that are in orange as number 5. So they're sort of all in orange.
Karen, we're gonna hold all other public comment to the end. Thank you.
And
You
then-
can't hear
We
us?
don't know what you're referencing.
Right, because it's at our board table. It will be part of public record though.
Yep.
Thank you.
And then all of the red just were below the top 5. And they are sort of ranked here, again, with the justification of that ranking numerically anyway, under the notes category.
But interesting to note that B and A1 were no vote for the administration that voted, and they were number 2 and number 3. Really interesting, very stark difference.
But the other 3 have some overlap, which is.
Oh, great, yeah, those just stood out to me right off the bat.
Totally.
Also interesting that B had 10 of 11 no-go votes,
Mhm.
and that's our number 2.
Mhm.
Can I ask, Patrick? What does that mean, no go?
So
I mean, does that mean that? I mean, is that the feeling of admin? What does that mean, no go? It won't be done?
So again, we were looking for the top 5 that surfaced from the admin team.
I understand that.
In addition to that, it was useful to know, are there some that are really concerning that you would not want to see happen out of your concern for what it would mean educationally, et cetera? And that's the no-go.
And I mean, that aligns, like B and A1 aligns with what we've heard from them at the table, right? They, the administration that we've heard from really supported the grade banding for a variety of reasons, and both A1 and B are not great with that.
And then the green are like that start different, if you compare those differences, they're all early ed focused. And allow for better collaboration amongst the grade level teachers. And create opportunities for specialization. The green all have that. So I don't know. Did they use the same, like, rubric that we did to grade it?
You know, this happened prior to that.
Okay.
That's it. Oh, so it wasn't weighted.
So it's hard to know exactly like what form their opinions, but I do.
I have
find those-
lots and lots of notes behind all of this about pros and cons for each of these.
Can I just ask a clarifying question?
Yep.
Was the admin team that did the same ranking, were they privy to the same summary of model for boards July 2025 that indicates how many positions would be eliminated?
They had all of that information and then some. So what's behind a lot of the information that you have, like especially that information that I just added.
Yep.
About the number of positions is school by school, scenario by scenario, position by position, the FTEs that are assigned, like they have all the way down to that grain size, they have to inform that grain size. So they have everything you've seen and more. And that, the reason that is not shared widely at this point is because it becomes really identifiable because they're small. And it creates a big stir, and we don't need to create that kind of stir 16 different ways. The impact that has on the organization would be significant. It may be prudent at some point to surface that as we kind of whittle this down some, but just know that when we start saying, this is how many of this position in this school, it becomes very identifiable and has an impact.
It's just very difficult to make decisions if we don't, I mean, I know it's a dilemma. I understand it, but it's really hard for a board member to make these kinds of decisions without a bit more granular information. You have privy to it, we do not.
But again, doing that with 16 options.
Well, are we gonna get that granular information on the options that we choose?
Right, we have to define that, right? We have to define what's next, what level of detail do we want to continue this process? So I think that certainly will be considered. I know as the finance person at the table, I'm gonna want a good level of detail from it. For the dollars and cents, obviously the educational impact is paramount. But as the finance person at the table, I would love to get more granular with thinking about, right, the impact on our community. Like, I think Patrick calls out a really important thing. Like, the last thing I would want us to do is have these in front of us with position titles and have that person sitting at home listening, freaking out, like, wait, this, my position's on this chopping block, and like potentially making rash decisions when that option is getting thrown out, right? I really want to be thoughtful. I don't want to cause a bunch of distress for each individual person because their position is listed. So I think we need to be thoughtful, the community impact, the student impact that could have if their teachers are feeling that. While also balancing that we do need the information to really understand the decisions that we're gonna put forward for the constituents to vote on.
And I think an important word to add in there is again, right? Like, so I'm thinking about a comment Shannon made at the retreat about how many years we are contemplating possibly making reductions. We do the ethical thing and have upfront conversations with staff members that might be implicated before they hear it at a board meeting. And then say, actually, no, that's not happening. And we have lost people because of that. And the folks that do stay, it has an impact on them. And I just want that to, I understand the need, and from my perspective, I have no problem with all of those details being shared. And we need to know that it has an impact, and we need to gauge all of that.
Yep.
Well, I think the key is to make sure that that information is kept confidential. Right? And you know the information. People can, boards figure out ways to make sure that information that they need to know to make decisions is kept confidential. I mean, I totally understand, Melissa, where I mean, I understand, you don't want to have premature, but I suspect there are good ways you can, because it's not just financial, it's also an impact on education.
Yeah, as I
You know,
said,
so-
I think we just have to figure the structure out and how we do. I don't know all the VSA blah 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 stuff that comes along when we say we have an executive session that Aaron rattles off each time we go into a session, but maybe those are the types of details when we're talking position titles, and that's the thing that has to go to executive session. I don't even know if that's allowed, that I might be breaking the law by saying that from a board governance standpoint, but that's something we have to consider when we think about how we go through the process of analyzing these, at least from my.
Sort of the tipping point between what's allowed for executive session and what's not is when it becomes evaluative. It's clear if we're evaluating an employee. That's executive session worthy, and if it's short of that, it's pretty tricky to meet the bar, the standard
Okay.
for executive session. And I'm not saying, evaluating a position in a small district that position becomes identifiable, like there may be a relationship there between evaluating an employee if that warrants executive session, but that would be a conversation we'd have to have. We'd probably want to get legal advice on that.
Yeah.
And have confidence if we were going to go into executive session.
Okay. So next on the agenda is an action item that identifies options for education delivery to advance to further study. We have 5 here. If and whoever makes the motion could be specific about which options or make a proposal about which options, but I'm open to motions. Liz?
Would we also be including in that motion the top 3 by administration?
One who made the motion could do that.
Could do that. Okay.
Can I clarify? I didn't quite catch that, Liz. What was your motion again?
She didn't make a motion. She was asking if
Oh.
the top 3 options from the admin team could be added to our consideration for this motion.
And 2 of those 3 are already
Yeah.
one of your 5, so it's really one more beyond the 5 things that we're talking about.
The third is almost identical, so. One of them just which school.
Correct, yes.
So. I don't know.
Yes.
Maybe in the context of, like, do we need a motion first, before I can discuss?
Yep.
No,
There's no.
we gotta have a motion. first.
Okay.
Um,
I'll start.
thanks.
This is just a starting place. And if this gets shot down, know that I expected that. It's just a place. Alright. Okay, I move that we, get the exact language. Sorry, I'm very nervous, so give me a second to get my ducks in a row. Thank you, Kathy.
We know you.
Okay. I move that we identify the following options for educational delivery to advance for further study. I'm gonna list out the options and I'm gonna say why. So I move that we evaluate option E, option I.4.1 and I.4.2, option I.6, option F, and option A.2. Here's why. When comparing the numbers from.
Yeah.
I wanted to make sure the board identifies, the motion is the board identifies the following options for educational delivery. To advance options for further study. E. I.1.
Oh, I.4. Point one.
E was the first one?
E is the first one. I.4.1 and I.4.2.
I.4. Okay, I.4.2.
I.6.
Yeah.
F.
Yeah.
8.2.
Is that the end of the motion?
That is the end of the motion. Did you mean 8.1? Oh, sorry, 8.1. I meant 8.1.
Okay,
Sorry. 8.1, not 8.1 was the one we read. No. 8.1.
So Meredith, let me just, the board identifies the following options for educational delivery. To advance options for further study. Colon, E, I.4.1, I.4.2, I.6, F, 8.1.
8.1, yes, yes, ma'am, thank you. Thank you all for sticking with me. In looking at our ranking.
We should get a.
Yeah, you can get a second.
Oh, second for discussion.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
Second.
Yeah.
Okay.
Was that, so let's,
Me.
All right, discussion.
That gives us 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That gives us 6. That gives us 6 options to evaluate, 2 of which are similar. The ones that were, so F was not in our top 5, but it was number 6. 8.1 was in our top 5, was not in the admin team's top 5, but is status quo, and I think merits a control for this discussion. And it's a place to start. Did you say? Which note taker, did she say option E in her motion? Yeah, so the first one. B, not E. Thank you, just validating. So E, both I.4s, I.6, F, 8.1.
I'm sorry, I heard B, you said E, thank you.
Yeah.
Apologize.
Any other discussion?
Meredith, would you accept a friendly amendment?
Absolutely.
You know, so those, I mean, people will decide whether they agree with those particular ones. My concern still is that there might be another option. And if are we advancing only these for further consideration? Because I'm hoping to talk to Floyd and get enough information that maybe another option is gonna come up. Will that be considered? And if it is, I'd like to add to your motion consideration of additional options that might be brought before my board members.
Perhaps we advance the following, but not limited to.
Oh, yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
sure.
I feel like one, and I could be wrong, like I realize it's specific to plus minus 10 positions reduced, but it's the status sole option. So I feel like that's the option that allows us to explore other options outside of the change to the educational delivery model. That's the way I read it, but I may be misinterpreting.
But if that's what's intended, I saw
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
8.1 as a specific, okay, we're gonna do this by complying with our work rules, right? You know, in terms of RIF versus, attrition, that kind of thing. So I thought it was a little more narrow if we're interpreting that to mean that other options that any board member has to deal with our fiscal challenge without dealing with the community schools stuff. That's fine, but I don't know whether that's what you mean.
I 100% on board. I would love to add that in.
Well, and I like Kylie's wording because, thinking about Anthony's example like that, so that's you, are you looking at an SU structure, or something like that technically wouldn't fit into the way A1 is written currently. So maybe we use Kylie's wording, not limited to.
The only other wondering I have is, if we evaluate another 16, like, whatever. What I'm worried about is us running out of time.
Mhm.
And so wondering about a drop dead date of if like no other viable option by X date that we're exploring. We're not opening more proposals, because at that point, we might have to be sort of making financial decisions. Might open the door to redo the process, but I wonder about just for this iteration.
I don't have any problem with that as long as the financial information is available. If. Again, it's really hard to figure out another option if we don't have the information.
So how feasible is it that if we have 6 other options here and possibly more, that we can get all these financials back in a timely fashion to make a decision? I mean, that's a lot of work. I know what you want.
So again, I mean, you've chosen options that we have financially modeled, so. Until I have greater clarity on what additional financial modeling you're gonna be asking me to do. I'm assuming most of the work is done. In that we spent months leading up to this, putting this all together, so we have a body of deep information, trying to use as precise as we can. Many months ahead of even getting information from the state about what to expect. Like the reason we're being really transparent about the assumptions is because when we start building something in, I think it was May. We started building this for maybe a June presentation to finance and facilities, like. We're just being transparent. We have to make a lot of assumptions. And that's just reality. And we're trying to be clear about why we're making the assumptions we are, so we can share all of that information. I think it's different if something surfaces like, what would be the financial impact of merging with Addison Northwest? That opens up a whole different thing that we haven't modeled in years and years and years. It also requires politically conversations with Addison Northwest, like, hey, at least, just so you know, either we're gonna do this independent of you, which is tricky because they have information necessary to do that. Or are you interested in doing this together? And there may or may not be doing that from what conversations have been recently. So there's a political aspect to some of that as well, which we've talked about here. And we made a conscious decision not to have me model anything that involved a merger of any kind, SU or SD, because the politics hadn't been done to enable that yet.
Are you saying that your assessment of politics would veto an option?
I'm saying that we can't model an SU savings on our own, that it requires collaboration with Addis Northwest. And if a conversation hasn't been had with Addis Northwest about that collaboration, it would be inappropriate for me to initiate that with them.
I totally understand that. I'm thinking though, there's some basic financial information that is known. Right? Whether people want to pursue that politically is a different matter. But just the straight financial information of, I mean, it was reported back, Nate laid out, how you would do that. And so you identify, those positions that he was thinking, could be merged and the savings, that could be attributed to that. What you do with that information and whether it's feasible is, I think, a different matter. But I just don't want to get into a position where we're tasked to try to figure out alternatives to closing and disenrolling schools and not have the information that we need to try to put that together.
Liz?
One thing that was, I'd like to just remember that was a issue with working together with Virgins is that they felt that they had done a lot of work to deal with their educational opportunities and financial realities that we had not and did not seem willing to do. And that was feedback from their side. So I think it is important we do some work and that might make them more interested in collaborating with us further for something like that. Doing the work we're doing now, I think would be helpful for the desire to collaborate with us. And also, so the financials, yes, it's important to have financial information. I've heard that. But what I also heard you saying, Patrick, was that you had a lot of background about the choices, the no-goes, for instance, why, and the top three about the education impact, education opportunities impact, right? And that's what I'd like to hear more about with these options is how it could improve outcomes for our students and improve access to education. So I think maybe that is something that might be available that we could see and hear more about and is incredibly politically powerful to be able to go and say, this is how our students and families will benefit from the various options in the ways that they might. It'd be nice to be able to talk about those things with people.
Think that's a good idea, Liz. There's a bunch of different perspective and research on some of these things. So I hope that if we enter into a discussion about, what's beneficial for students, and particularly around community schools, that the full picture be brought to us. Because there are differences of opinion, Liz, around the value of a community school for the students who live in that community.
And there definitely is, but there are also opinions from people who provide those services to our students about what they're able and not able to do in these different scenarios.
Yeah, I think some teachers have differences of opinions about that too, Liz.
I'll also add there also will be probably a differing opinion amongst parents. My children, do I love my community school? Yes, I do. Do I want to have to transfer? I live in Moncton. Do I want to have to bring my kids to Bristol, Starksboro, and Haven? No, I don't. But I'm leaning towards feeling that there is probably a greater benefit to grade banding. In particular, if I just look at it for my own children, knowing how much they benefited from early intervention, but probably could have benefited more from an even earlier intervention. And seeing, you know, when we can pool our resources, how much, you know, more of a positive impact that could have for our students.
Yeah, I hear you. I do. I recognize that that's part of the discussion for
Yeah.
sure.
And so, I mean, Liz, I was gonna say almost the same thing you said, is I do feel like it's important to look at the financials. But also on the academic outcomes.
I agree.
And I find it interesting that our staff picked the, you know, the top three were, yes, the most savings, which, you know, negatively impacts them, a lot of them personally, right? But it did offer our students more resources through free banding. That's a great point. Yeah.
Just one question on the motion. I noticed that option B was left off as a possibility. I don't really feel strongly one way or the other, but I think it's worth making sure we all have the chance to have that conversation, given that it rose to our second rank. And I'm assuming that the reason why it wasn't included in the initial motion was because it was absolutely the worst option according to the admin, with 10 out of 11 saying no go, and not one of the 11 ranking it in their top 5. So
Correct.
I'm not going to strongly argue for the inclusion or not the inclusion of B. I'm not strongly wed to that, but I do think we should have the opportunity to talk about B as a potential option and the advantage or disadvantage of including that, given the overall board support prior to seeing this.
I would agree with Mike on that. I think that, I don't know, one thing that struck me about option B, it was a lot different from a lot of the other options. And if we're kind of looking across the board, what's the range of our options, to exclude that would be, yeah, I think we'd be missing an opportunity to, you know, to spin the breadth of our inquiry. Because a lot of some of these other ones that are on Meredith's initial list, very pretty similar. But option B it's different. I'd be very much interested in seeing what the numbers look like.
I'm on board, I'll add it. I don't know if I can amend my motion, but I would amend my motion to add B back into the discussion.
Can we discuss it a little first before we amend to add that?
Sorry. Yeah.
Right now, our students that are in middle school are able to access a pool, a full theater program, science. They have the fields. They have so much that they have access to that they would not have access to if we push them out into the elementary schools. So many things. 2 lunchrooms. I just had a kid that had his first day of junior high come after his half day to my house today, and he was so excited and so happy to be there. And I think it's the amount of opportunities that would be taken away from kids by pulling them out of Mount Abe and putting them into the elementary schools is what
I think that's.
I imagine.
Oh, so I'm
Yeah.
sorry. Yeah, I think that's a different conversation though, Liz. We're not going through each one right now, right? So we're just wanting to add one that actually made our top ranking, right? It was number 2. Yeah, so I mean, I think that's a different activity that we'll do at some point, I would think, with each one.
I'd agree, and Liz, I agree with everything that you said. I don't think B is an option that's personally attractive to me, but I think we owe it to the community to present all options and get their input. So that's why I would add it back into my original amendment.
Any other discussion about what's on the table, which has been iterative? There's 2 ways. Cleaner for notes if we shoot down option 1, redo it. Let's do it. If that's where we're leaning.
You shoot down which one?
The first motion, which was just the first 6 that were mentioned, if we say, like, if we vote that one down, if we vote that motion down, and then we'll create a new motion.
easier
That
than
includes-
amending and doing.
That
all
includes B,
Well, Meredith made a motion.
and it got seconded, so we'd vote it down, we'd
Oh.
create a new motion.
The same content, but cleaner.
Yes. So,
And
And that
it
includes all-
includes all the iterations we've talked about.
The iterations would come after you vote this down.
Exactly.
Yes.
So just procedural.
It's a procedural, just technicality.
Okay.
Okay. So all those in favor of evaluating options E, I.4.1, I.4.2, I.6, F, and 8.1, please say aye. All those opposed?
Aye.
Any opposed, sorry.
Not any time.
Any abstentions? Okay, that motion doesn't pass.
I'm sure it was clear in the minutes.
Okay,
New motion.
new motion.
Okay. I move that the board evaluate the following options that include, but are not limited to. Option E. Options I.4.1 and I.4.2. Option I.6. Option F. Option A.1. And option B. With the knowledge that board members may raise additional options in the future.
Second.
Any discussion?
Can I have that, I'm looking at, sorry, because, I think, if I may, might be a little, redundant. Because in the beginning you said,
Not limited to.
right, included but not limited to, and then the end you say may raise additional options in the future.
That's
So I
you want
feel
to-
that's.
you take that out.
I will take that up.
Scratch the last.
Okay, scratch last session. So,
Do you still second?
I still second.
thank you. So, I move that the board,
You wanna-
or do I need to say the whole thing?
Well, why doesn't Vicky read it back?
Board evaluate, because you said different language this time than the last time.
You want me to go? Okay. The board will evaluate the following options, but not limited to. Option E. Options I.4.1 and I.4.2. Option I.6. Option F. Option 8.1. And option B. That's good.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vicky.
The second stands. Is there any discussion?
Just have a clarifying question. Just because of and it's really more of a process. So the initial process that led to the 16 options you have here there were the options that the advisory council came up with that are included. And then beyond that, any individual board member who sent me an idea got modeled. I think I'm hearing something different now, which is if another idea surfaces, that idea should come to this board and this board decides if that idea is being modeled or not.
I would think so.
Yeah, I
Sure.
just feel like otherwise you're might be running around like chick with your head cut off, right?
And I think you just made a conscious decision about which ones to advance. I think you're in a position now where you're deciding which ones go forward and which ones don't.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Which is what I tried to get advice the finance and facilities to do in the first place, unsuccessfully. So that's been my attempt from the beginning, but it feels even more important now.
Right.
Okay. Yes? That's the understanding? Okay, we put these board work. Okay. All those in favor of that motion? Please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
Abstain.
Thank you, and Kristen. Okay, the motion does pass. Okay.
That was a tough process, but I think we did a great job.
And I want to extra thank Herb for all of his work and thoughtfulness in challenging all of us to be more thoughtful. I know that your leadership in what you've put together has definitely made me think things through more carefully, and I really appreciate you, even though we don't always agree.
Thank you very much, ma'am. You want to come when I meet with Floyd?
Sure.
Okay. The last thing on our agenda for tonight was a discussion about the resolution that we had drafted. And I left it as a discussion because I got very few responses when I sent out the draft for feedback. So there's a second round of feedback that I had asked for. Which is okay, we're all busy. But it feels important that if this is important to us, that we sort of start to muddle that out so we can influence where we want. So I don't know if someone wants to open the discussion, has some strong thoughts about it, or which direction we want to go. Again, this is just a discussion for tonight. There's no action on it because I didn't get enough to put any action behind it, but.
Well, I'll say a couple things. I mean, I think that we discussed it already once.
Yep.
And then the task at the last meeting is, I think the pretty much agreement of the board was that we try to incorporate that discussion into a revision of the original language of the document.
Yep, which you did.
Yeah, which we did.
Yep.
So I'm a little disappointed. I mean, I'm not sure whether the fact that you got, not so much input could as much be reflective of the fact that the redraft of the resolution reflected what we talked about at that last meeting. So I don't know, who knows? I still feel that, given what's happening in Montpelier, I think that taking a proactive as opposed to a reactive sort of approach is in our interest. And, it's sort of analogous to the, Levinson cost saving mindset. We have a mindset that we're trying to take our, our sort of how we approach and how we reform our how education is delivered in our district. I think that's useful. It's useful. We don't know, obviously, how quickly or how slowly the committee that was convened on August 1st is going to work. So I don't know. So I think, again, I'm very much of the mind that we be proactive. And then the other part of the resolution, of course, is our commitment to stick by our 2023 commitment to the taxpayers that, if we have to close schools for, good reasons or bad reasons, that the towns have the ability to vote on that. It could be a vote on a school closure.
I agree with what Brad is saying, and just add one other perspective, which is that dozens upon dozens of districts across the state right now are telling the task force what they would like. What suits them, what their preferences are. If we take no action, I think that's sending a message that I guess maybe we don't have an opinion or don't care.
Well, it sort of complements what we're doing on these options. I mean, if we're coming up with something that's the greatest thing since sliced bread for our district, we want to convey that to people in Montpelier who might be making decisions about that affect us.
Yeah, and I just add a little bit that these other districts are weighing in, saying this is what we'd like to do. If I was on that task force and I didn't hear from a district, what sort of message is that sending?
Any other thoughts?
Can I propose some revisions?
Please.
Sure.
So, number one, that starts with MAUSD resolves. I would like to see that say MAUSD resolves to insist on prioritizing student safety, well-being, and educational excellence as the core drivers of educational reform. Yeah, I think that's a big one. And also I would like to not include bullet point 2. MAUSD further resolves to honor its 2023 commitment to the towns, so on and so forth. I would like to strike that from the resolution. And I think that is everything that I would propose.
I'm just putting in comments right now. This isn't staying there, but just so you all understand or are following along with what's being said.
I appreciate that, Meredith, I really do. However, that would be really difficult to. I think that would be sending a difficult message to our communities. In light of what we're doing in the future. I mean, no, make no mistake about it, if we are consolidated into a big district, we will not be making those decisions ourselves like we're trying to do. My perspective is that number 2 is something that's important to, I thought, to the board, and I think it is to the community. So I'm not really comfortable with the resolution with that.
Well, yeah, it sends a pretty strong message if we have it included in the draft resolution and that gets taken out. I mean, yeah.
Well, that was
This
the hesitation
really-
of sharing the draft
really-
resolution. Is that we
Really
hadn't had that.
problematic.
Yeah, but we hadn't had that conversation either, which was interesting. I'm not saying either one way or the other, but that's what the issue was of sharing it, is now it's a public document. People have read it and the board didn't discuss it or draft it, right? A subset did, so that becomes the rub.
But it's also a public document that the board, agreed not to close the school without an affirmative town.
It is true, right, which is why I'm not arguing for or against, I'm just saying it. The whole that you're talking about,
Well, you're upgrading me a little bit.
a little bit, but it's not, it's warranted, the upgrade, right, like. A resolution from our board should reflect what our board values and if everyone agrees on it. And it is in the articles, and that hasn't been changed either. Liz,
I could support it with Meredith's suggestions. That was not in our original articles of agreement that we did all vote on as a community. It limits the scope of understanding that what is happening at one school affects what is happening at another school and the way that we are all interconnected with each other. And if there are struggles at Beaman, it does affect us. If our students go to Bristol, you pull a kid out, you pull a support person from Bristol to go to Beaman, or for this is one set of staff, this is one set of students, this is a set of taxpayers, it's statewide, but still specifically us. And I think there's a reason why in the rest of the state, or the majority of the rest of the state, that it is a full community vote in order to make changes to any of the schools in their district. So it's not just board, the votes go to the entire community. And that is really important because it has an effect on all of the communities.
So my understanding of the legislation is that it'll be up to the districts to close the schools, and that individual towns and voters will not have the authority to vote down the closing of a school.
You're assuming that that's in the recently passed legislation?
Yet that's what it was saying. I was reading it tonight.
that it's up to the individual districts as they are, however they are redesigned, to decide whether the schools will be opened or closed, and the
That's
voters,
not in the legislation.
the voters will have the opportunity to vote an overall budget above the foundation formula, but they will not have the authority to open and close schools.
That depends on whether the consolidation is into a supervisory
Or a
district
district.
or into a supervisory union.
So it seems to me that we don't know if we even have that authority.
We have it until, while we're
Yeah.
governed this way.
Nancy.
Right.
So that, what you're talking about, Kathy, is there's some existing law in Title 16, the education laws.
It's actually not in Act 73.
I'm sorry, not sure what you're reading from, but I'm pretty familiar with Act 73. And the issue that you're talking about, the powers of a board, is an existing law, Title 16. And what we're talking about are articles of agreement that further refine that to say, a town has a vote. So I'm not sure what you're reading
But
from.
don't the articles of agreement become null and void once the district has been reconstructed by the state?
No, because there are
If
different,
it does.
It's an if, right? So to Nancy's point, if the consolidation is into a supervisory union, which is a collection of districts, it's possible that in our example, MAUSD remains MAUSD with MAUSD's articles of agreement that is in an Addison County supervisory union. It has an MAUSD board. It basically MAUSD stays just as we are. Only we now have the shared supervisory union structure instead of our own sort of district perspective. So if we are absorbed into a school district, then the question about articles of agreement is less clear, presumably because we have different articles of agreement. What currently exists no longer exists, and there's some new articles of agreement for the newly formed entity that would need to be created.
in addition, right now, Kathy, there's a legislative study committee specifically addressing the question of whether communities should have a voice in those sorts of issues going forward. So that's an open issue, Kathy. It's not decided, it hasn't been decided in Act 60, in Act 63. So if you take this number 2 out, it seems to me you're sending a message. You're sending a message, we really want to be consolidated into supervisory district, and we don't want to have any say over what goes on in our schools.
I will just say, I think you'd be in a challenging position to sign on to this without a conversation about the pros and cons of a supervisory district and a supervisory unit. That conversation hasn't happened yet, to my knowledge, at the board table.
Well, then.
I was surprised that, that was it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I think it's worth having the conversation, right? Because I think right now as written, it's very much in favor, so C reads very much by calling out such as a hybrid SU-SD structure. And tailored to the needs of the community values of our district. As a resolution from the board that we would favor supervisory union structure. And I think that if after discussion, we as a board come to that conclusion, I think actually as written, it makes a lot of sense. And in that structure, I think as Herb is arguing, I think there's some value in confirming kind of what the principles of this district are as is, or if that's what we want to maintain. So I see the consistency of the document, but I think I echo the call for, is that the consensus of the board that that's the model that we want to propose to the redistricting? If not, I think we need to be much more open about what possibilities we as a board will be willing to entertain. Would be willing to take a supervisory union or a school district, a unified district, if that was, depending on what that board thought best. And then the last thing I'll say is, and I've been trying to push for this, I don't really have any opposition to moving forward with this, other than to say, I still have serious reservations that a single current district sending their request to this redistricting board without support of other districts that might join the union or might want a supervisory district, I think that the weight of that request is gonna be severely diminished. Right? If we're trying to make an argument that we have a plan for how we're gonna work together with other districts, but don't have their voice included, I don't know how that redistricting board would at all react when they got this from us and something different from Middlebury and something different from Madison
I
Northwest.
hear the original vision, I think though, Mike, was to have a document that would reach out to those other districts to start that conversation. I mean, I think.
Well, right, well, the revision, watered it down. In the sense it didn't really say a preference for a supervisory, a district or a union. At least that was the intent of the second version of the resolution.
And I think the point, Mike, was to give an opportunity for you folks to talk to these other districts. Of course, time's marching on, and they're gonna come up with a report in a couple of months, so I don't know.
And I think on the point of whether, one district is sending, a communication, to the, to the state. I hear you that it would be stronger if Virgins and Middlebury and Hancock were involved in Lincoln. But districts all around the state are sending in their, sort of their thoughts about restructuring. And, I don't know that they're all have, reached, deals or agreements with surrounding districts or unions or what have you.
Any other thoughts? I just want to reiterate what I said originally, about point number one. I get the sense from this board that student safety, well-being, and educational excellence are our top priorities. At least that's my interpretation of the discussions that we had, and I would just hope that if we do pass this resolution, that can be at the very top of whatever we pass, because I think the rest of it is just politics of how we get there, but ultimately what we want is students that are safe, that are growing personally and academically.
No argument there.
Brad, can you just clarify, what is the 2023 commitment that you were referencing here?
There was a vote, if I haven't, I'd have to go back and look at the documents, but there was a vote of the board, not to close schools, without an affirmative vote by the towns.
Because that piqued my curiosity before, so in 2021, obviously a different iteration of this board defined what closure was. And I think in that context of that conversation, that was all part of the commitment to not closing a school without a town vote, and that prompted a conversation about, well, how do we define closure then? Because that was ambiguous at the time. So we have that, so that's why I wasn't sure of that particular date, if there was something in addition to that.
So that approaches another subject. That was a different board. That was the 2021 board. This is a totally different.
It was a unified board still, it wasn't,
Right.
we weren't a supervisory union at the time, but obviously a very different makeup, only maybe 3 people. Were you on 2021?
Yes.
Just started, just right, so
Like.
two or three board members of this were on that.
Yeah, Aaron had just joined, just right at that fun time.
Great time.
Yeah.
It-
And what we did, we didn't change the articles of agreement, we defined school closure. So. Yeah,
Thinking about out there.
and school closure was not moving all of the students to another school, which gives us a lot of flexibility for the grade banding. And that's board, that's not community vote, it's community, even if it was like other boards, and whole community vote would be required for school closure. Which maybe in the last one, it could say community instead of town, but so like Ripton, for instance, has a more typical situation where the board was able to move the students, but they cannot close the school without a full community vote. And so it's staying in the district under the district's control for now, while the town takes time to figure out how they feel about having it back and officially closing, which I imagine is gonna be, that will need a bigger vote from across all of their district.
And we don't have to hash everything out tonight, but the discussion sounds like, you know, there are still some fuzzy points. If this is the document we're working on. One way to maybe give us more time to have the SUSD conversation is to change number 2 to honoring articles of agreement and understood definitions, somehow wordsmith that. That still encompasses the sentiment, I think, of this, without being calling out that exact wording, which isn't there. Take it or leave it, not married to it, but just an idea. And that gives us some time to have other conversations about other things. If not, I think this conversation is continuing, and I I don't know how much energy to spend on it. I don't know how much energy to spend. I can't gauge that. So. So what do we think about that alteration?
I don't know, I'm just not sure what the downside is of not passing it pretty much the way it is. Meredith's suggestion for the front part is fine, I think. The fact, some of the comments that Kathy has made, I mean, the fact that ultimately we might not have the power to say, to insist on having a town vote. That could very well happen. I mean, but but by issuing a resolution, I mean, I think the board very clearly, 3 or 4 years ago, wanted to commit to the taxpayers and the communities that, we're not gonna willy-nilly. Our intent is not willy-nilly closing schools. And that sent a good message, and in fact, it was part of the springboard that led to improved relationships between the communities and the school board. And if now we're engaging in another round of very serious reconfiguring of our school, I mean, how does it hurt to say that, 3 or 4 years ago, we weren't gonna close schools without, community input and particularly a vote? How does that hurt? I'm not sure how it hurts us. But that's my view.
Does not hurt. Just discussion tonight. We don't know whether it's gonna be up for a vote. It might not be.
Well, the hope is that we're spending energy, which is why I was open when I said I don't know how much energy to spend on it. Because there seem to be a lot of competing things of. We haven't had some of the conversations it would take for us to this iteration of this board understand or feel that out. And so I'm trying to figure out what makes good sense for us if we're committed to sending a resolution. How detailed are we? Or how detailed are we not? And how much energy do I allow us all to do on that? I don't have a strong sense of that. So open to Brad's inquiry to you all about number 2. And then I need you all to tell me how much more we want to do on this.
I mean, it's time sensitive, right?
Yep.
So realistically. How much time do we have to put energy into it? And
That's what I'm thinking.
I had to sneak out of the last meeting that we talked about this early, so I do apologize. So I feel like I'm playing a little bit of catch up, but I was kind of. The beginning of that meeting, even kind of where Brad is today, or what he just said, which is. The state could come in and tell us we don't have that authority, and they're gonna tell us what schools to close, but we can continue. Oh my God, it's getting late. To reiterate to them what we would like to be able to still have. What's important to us and all of that, and put it in here. It just lets them know where we stand. And I don't necessarily think that there's necessarily harm in that. It could be out of our control in 3 months. We don't know.
Yeah, we're not gonna get everything we want.
No, nobody is.
But we're certainly, we're saying what we want. We haven't had the SUSD discussion, and I think that's the most telling point, to people sitting on that panel. Is if you have a district that comes to you and says, this is what we feel best meets the needs of our students. And of our faculty and our schools, that to me is worth sending a letter with. But just to say, oh, hi, we're here and this is what we like, is like a wish list to Santa Claus. And I think it's much stronger if we have something very clear.
Yeah, I could see it's doing something like that as a follow-on to the sort of resolution. Absolutely. It would be much stronger. But, you know, as Melissa just said, I mean, Kelly just said that, you know, it is a little time sensitive. You know, given that the committee that is looking at the redistricting has started, and they have a December deadline.
They have a
So-
draft report, I think, coming out sometime in October.
Yeah, so I mean, I don't know.
So why don't I just take thumbs? If you feel like number 2 should be stricken, please put your thumb up. Okay, so the majority of you do not at the moment feel that should be stricken. So I'm gonna leave that in for now. And the sentence that's in green that I added, is that in lieu of everything else following it or in addition to everything else following it?
Sorry. Oh. Meredith's edition in the first paragraph.
Correct.
I don't care.
Well, I think you do care, and I think we should honor
No, I didn't mean that to be flippant, I meant like literally, either way, like either, does not bother me.
Yeah.
Either way, I think I would vote in addition,
Yeah,
rather
would say
than,
in addition.
I thought that was how you presented
Yeah,
it.
I just wasn't clear about
Yeah.
that, so, okay,
You have insist on twice, just in case, just. as-
well, I'll clean it up and I'll resend.
Okay.
Okay. So with that in mind, knowing we haven't had further conversations, I will clean it up. Resend, if no other further comments come in between now and our next board meeting, or if they do. I'll try to get on the agenda for next meeting too, so that at least by mid-September, we've got something out the door.
it. Is it possible in September to also discuss the SUSD?
Yeah.
Because before I vote on this, I wouldn't want to see any more.
And a lot of those materials were sent during that special meeting we called, so you have a packet full of materials and more can be added to that if we can find more.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, Liz?
Is there thumbs on affirmative community vote? Does that make any difference? Versus affirmative town vote?
I think we'd have to go back to the article and make sure it's consistent. Cause that was sort of my, like, if this had just said it's sticking to the articles and the definitions, I think that, but. Let me double check that.
Okay.
Okay. That was it. We have a public comment. If anyone has any public comment.
I just want to say thank you for putting on the agenda the discussion of supervisor unions versus districts. I do understand that it's a time-sensitive conversation, but I don't want us to be removing resources that we have without looking at opportunities, generative ways that we can create opportunities for our district and create cost savings at the same time. I also, I know that there is a time sensitive nature, it being December 1st, so they need to make a decision, but don't give up your ability to stand for something while you have that ability. And when you're saying you don't know how much to invest in this or how much time to put into it, I see that it is representation and democracy. So please put the time in for that. Thank you.
Any other public comment? Okay, I don't see any. Okay. I don't know who was up for our board evaluation. I didn't look that up. Thank you, Justin. So just run through that.
Right, what is the level of engagement of all board members?
Aye.
Pretty high, huh?
Does the agenda follow?
Yes.
Yes.
An additional public comment.
Additional public comment.
Does the chair effectively establish the agenda material for distribution to the board?
Yes, yes.
Is the chair effective in fostering a professional culture regarding fair and open deliberation, full participation of all board members during the integrity of the board process?
Yes.
Yes.
Feedback for the chair?
Good job.
Yeah.
What went well with the meeting?
We processed through very challenging conversations in a respectful way to move us forward.
What suggestions do you have for ways to improve future?
Continue the positive movement that we made tonight.
Painted metal bumper, all the brackets.
Motion to
Could we,
adjourn?
Go ahead, Liz.
we have a suggestion for ways to improve meetings, and also just happy first day of school tomorrow. Tomorrow's a big day, so yay.
Thank you
But
for all.
we have
your
a
time.
community comment on ways to improve our meetings, if we'll hear it. Yeah,
This is a board of Val, but I'd be happy to take an email from you, mystery community member. Thank you. Okay. I will take a motion to adjourn. Kathy first, Melissa second. All those in favor of adjourning at 9:34, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?